Welcome into Hoopsville, everybody. It is February 21st, 2016. We are entering the final week of the regular season, the championship week, as it were, in Division III basketball. You're watching Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA NABC studios. Of course, you can interact with us on Twitter at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. Email us, hoopsville at D3Hoops.com. Join us on Facebook at Facebook.com/Hoopsville. We're also on Instagram at D3Hoopsville. Lots of ways to interact with us. We hope you'll take advantage of those when you get the opportunity. Plenty to talk about. We'll have a new Top 25, obviously, next week. Or not next week, I apologize. Tomorrow, Monday. We will have another set of regional rankings coming up on Wednesday. Forgive me, those watching. A little bit under the weather. As a result, my eyes are watering a bit. We have, as I said, a new set of regional rankings. The last ones we will see will come out on Wednesday. Of course, we'll have the new top 25 as well. Every conference will decide its automatic bids, though we've already got one in the bag. Washington University women have clinched the UAA championship. Congratulations to them. They are the first ones to clinch an automatic bid to the NCAA tournament. Of course, there is no tournament in division or in the UAA. That is outright on results. So the one game that WashU will play next week is irrelevant to the standings, and so they are in. The men, we will have essentially a championship game between Emory and Rochester coming up on Saturday, as both teams lost today to be both 10-3 in conference. I think what hurts the most there is it may hurt the at-large chances. Emory's now, if Emory takes yet another loss, stellar SOS with a lot of losses. That may get to a point where they can't get in. For Rochester, probably in better situation, though a loss today. We'll see what happens in the regional rankings, but that might cost them a little bit. Remember, they were second in the regional rankings a little while ago, or last week. So how will that all play out? Honestly, I think both teams needed to win out. Chicago lost again, I think, this week, and so Chicago is now officially in this situation of needing an at-large bid, but out of the central region where they're not even regionally ranked, if memory serves. So, it's amazing how much has changed in the UAA in just a matter of weeks. A matter of 3 weeks, things went on its head. Chicago now 17-7 overall, 8-5. They did lose to NYU this week. NYU they ended up splitting with NYU this season. NYU winning at their place 72-59. Have WashU ahead of them for Chicago. We'll find out what happens. But again, Rochester and Emory tied at 10-3 on top of the conference. NYU and Chicago at 8-5. The Rochester-Emory game will be played at Rochester. So they're going to have to play it at the Palestra, which will certainly give Rochester an advantage there, you would think. But we'll see how that all plays out. We mentioned regional rankings. Again, the second ones came out. We discussed them a lot on Thursday. In that central region, we were talking about whether or not Chicago can position themselves. They were sixth in the regional rankings before taking that loss to NYU. You got to figure that's going to hurt them some more. So we'll see how that all plays out. But certainly not easy, to say the least. In the UAA, but congratulations on the women's side again for WashU advancing on to the NCAA tournament yet again. No surprise. They will probably get a bunch of bids. NYU and is certainly in position to get an at-large bid. Chicago was at one point. I don't think that's going to happen. But plenty to talk about in the UAA. Plenty to talk about across the board, in my opinion. There's certainly a lot of things to look at when we get into conference tournaments here, because tonight's show is going to feature a lot of teams who probably have to get in, no matter what they want to do. They have to get in as an automatic bid. They cannot have an at-large. Now, they've won their conference tournaments. They've given themselves, or the regular seasons, I should say, they've given themselves a chance with the tournaments having to come through them to lock that up. But as you'll hear from some of our guests tonight, that's been the case in the past and it hasn't worked out. But we will talk to Concordia-Wisconsin's women's basketball coach, Stacey Brunner-Jones. Also talk to Birmingham-Southern women's coach, Mike Ricks. Old Westbury men's basketball coach, Coach Tomlin will join us, not to be confused with the Pittsburgh Steelers, I should say, Pittsburgh Steelers head coach. St. Joe's of Maine coach will join us. Mike McDevitt will join us on the show. All of them have locked up the regular season titles, or at least that championship and the home court advantage in the conference tournaments this week. But all of them are going to need to go and win that AQ. They can't risk getting an at-large. So that's our topic. We'll also talk to Ryan Scott from the Mid-Atlantic region. Talk about, now that things have settled down a little bit, it was a crazy weekend trying to determine seeding, especially on the men's side. We'll talk about the tournaments ahead, find out who his favorites are and who his dark horse is in the Mid-Atlantic. That's all coming up. Of course, don't forget, Thursday we'll be on the air at 7 o'clock, again, to kind of look at conference tournaments midway through, or at least a third of the way through. Some of them are very heavily on the weekend. We'll also talk then next Sunday, a week from tonight. We'll hit the air a little bit earlier, 6 o'clock Eastern time. Talk to some teams who are on the bubble. Also talk to some teams who may have gotten in as a surprise. Lots of things to discuss, and we'll select who we think are going to make the NCAA tournament as at large on the men's and women's side. By the way, I want to remind you of the Hoopsville fundraising campaign. Been a little stagnant since we last talked. Still under $4,000 raised in just over 3 weeks. We 52% of the fundraiser, but we have got 1 week left. So I now challenge everybody to help us out on the Hoopsville fundraising page. We've got a week to get this done. All the donations help us improve this show and allow us to travel to see and cover Division III basketball. Not really see it, but cover it. Give a chance to shine a light on the games. This is how you can do it, and we certainly appreciate any support you can give us. Just grabbing the tweet link so we can do that out there. Now on Twitter, we're telling you how to join in and help us out if you can. Again, a little over 52% of our goal, and we want to hit that by the end of business, as it were, next Sunday. Of course, next Monday, a week from tomorrow, the 29th of February, Leap Day, was when brackets will come out, and we'll have a special bracket show breaking it all down and talking to the committee chairs as well. Again, if you have questions for us, tweet us at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. Email us, hoopsville at d3hoops.com. Join us on Facebook at facebook.com/Hoopsville. I was double-checking how the top 25 did. Not surprisingly, a little bit quiet in some areas and not quiet in others. John Carroll lost to Mount Union, which was a surprise. John Carroll now lost 3 in a row, but then recovered to beat Muskingum. So John Carroll 22-3 now will probably fall out of the top 10. Elmhurst is in a little bit of a tailspin. They're 6-4 in their last 10, believe it or not. Lost to Illinois Wesleyan 77-67. They are now 20-5. Alma now 19-6, having lost to Albion earlier in the week, and then beat Olivet. Roanoke up and down, and that Lynchburg game we talked about on Thursday was followed up by a loss to Randolph-Macon. So you put up 156 points against Lynchburg in double overtime, and then Roanoke fouled it up by only putting up 73 against Randolph-Macon. And if you know what Roanoke's doing there with a VMI-styled offense, 73 points is paltry. So an off day for Coach Moyer's gang there. The tournament's going to be important. I only think one ODAC team comes out, to be completely honest. There's an outside chance, that Virginia Wesleyan's well enough position and doesn't win the automatic bid that they may get an at-large, but it's going to be dicey. Franklin and Marshall lost yet again, this time to Dickinson. Wouldn't be surprised if they now fall out of the top 25 officially, as they're sitting 22nd with that loss. Of course, the Centennial Conference will still go through F&M. Penn State Barron is in a tailspin heading into the conference tournament. Lost to Hilbert and Pitt Greensburg this week. They are now 20-4, most likely will fall out of the top 25 as well. As for those who got votes, that's where the carnage took place on the men's side. NYU lost to WashU. Rochester lost to Carnegie Mellon. Northwestern lost 2 games this week, Superior and St. Scholastica. Northwestern, who came into the week with a 399 SOS, which reminds me you ought to check out those SOSs and have them on hand in case you have any questions. Lost twice this week, proving that they're going to need an at-large bid. Not that we didn't think they were going to need one anyway. But they definitely going to need an at-large bid now. But that's more of that carnage. Emory lost to Case Western Reserve. We mentioned they lost today. Texas Lutheran lost to Southwestern to wrap up the regular season. Scranton lost to Catholic. Chicago lost to NYU. Wesleyan lost to Middlebury. Virginia Wesleyan lost twice. They're now 17-8. That's why I don't know if the ODAC's going to get that at large. Virginia Wesleyan lost to Guilford and Lynchburg. Roanoke's about the only one who's got a chance, maybe. I said that earlier, that maybe Virginia Wesleyan, it's really that up in the air. ODAC may not get any extra bids. Either will the WIAC, the UAA may get any extra bids. The top conferences in the country, 3 of them, may not get a second bid to the tournament this year. St. John's lost to Gustavus Adolphus, which we mentioned earlier this week. MIT lost to Babson. Babson really playing some good basketball now. Dubuque, we mentioned, had lost earlier. La Crosse lost earlier, then came back to beat Stevens Point to win the WIAC tournament, regular season, I should say. Now they're positioned in the top 25. I'm sorry, I'm stumbling here. La Crosse beat Stevens Point to win the regular season of the WIAC. The tournament will now go through La Crosse, is what I'm trying to say. On the men's side. Women's side, very similar to the men's. Hope lost to Calvin, if you can believe it. Took their first loss of the season, losing to Calvin 88-77. We'll see where Hope will fall here. Listen, Scranton is 4. They beat Merchant Marine and Catholic, and they dominated Catholic 84-59. And listen, I think Scranton's a really good basketball team. I just don't think they're number 4. I think some people, when they see them, will understand that. They lack a little bit of the height that a lot of teams like Thomas More, George Fox, Texas, Tyler, and some of these other schools, Amherst, will bring to the table. I think Scranton's a good number 10 team. I think 4 is a little bit high. They'll probably rise to number 3 since they finished the regular season undefeated as well. Then you got to go down to Rochester, who lost to Carnegie Mellon today. Oshkosh, who lost to River Falls yesterday. Christopher Newport lost to Marymount yesterday. That ended a 17-game winning streak. Christopher Newport, Marymount then ends up winning the CAC championship regular season and now controls the CAC tournament through Arlington, Virginia, instead of having to go down to Newport News. So that might be relief to much of the CAC. Whitewater had a rough week, lost to Oshkosh and Eau Claire. So did NYU, who lost to Chicago and WashU this weekend. Trinity, Texas lost to Schreiner. Then you get into the carnage again outside the top 25. Birmingham-Southern lost to Hendricks. We'll talk about that coming up. Stockton lost to Montclair State earlier in the week. Montclair State basically won the regular season on a coin flip. Capital lost to Baldwin Wallace. McDaniel lost yesterday to Gettysburg after starting the game, I think 20-8. Then let Gettysburg right back in the game, and they lost by 9. St. Mary's, Minnesota lost to St. Thomas. No real surprise there. Claremont Mudd Scripps lost to Redlands. It's interesting there because Redlands is the alma mater of Claremont Mudd Scripps head coach. Redlands getting the win there, but Claremont Mudd Scripps still in pretty good shape. Stevens lost to St. John Fisher, and Guilford lost to Emory and Henry earlier in the week. So lots of losses, but not necessarily at the top of the top 25s. So for that much, you could say things have been a little bit status quo, a little bit comfortable. Lots more to talk about, certainly, between now and the end of the show, but we're going to get going to our interviews. If you have questions for us, though, tweet us at D3Hoopsville, hashtag Hoopsville, email us, hoopsville at D3Hoops.com. Join us on Facebook at Facebook.com/Hoopsville, etc. We'll try and answer your questions the best we can, and we know there's questions out there. Is my team in a good position? Do they need to win the AQ? Do they have a standard chance at the at-large? We'll try and answer those questions while we're also interviewing our guests. And, of course, you can do that via Twitter. Going to take a break. When we come back, we'll head out to Wisconsin and talk to Concordia. The Falcons in a position where they are going to have to win that at-large bid. No surprise there, but we'll talk to their head coach coming up. You're listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA and ABC studios. More Hoopsville right after this.
Something I discovered in myself is that if I have a goal, I can accomplish it.
It's a well-rounded experience.
At a Division III school, you primarily a student athlete, so School is really shaped around you developing yourself as a complete individual.
It helps a lot that you have a family with your team that can guide you.
I'm a Division III student athlete, and I know how powerful words can be. The term gay doesn't mean stupid, lame, or less than.
So I pledge to speak up if I hear the term gay used in a derogatory way or any other homophobic terms.
If you can play in Division III.
I'm a Division III student athlete, and my teammates unconditionally accepted me as part of their family. So now I pledge to do the same for others. If you can play in Division III.
I'm a current Division III student athlete, and I remember how intimidating the first year of college can be.
So if you're a first-year student athlete and nervous about coming out as LGBTQ, I pledge to stand by your side as your ally.
If you can play Division III.
I'm a Division III student athlete, and I believe student athletes can help break down the barriers of exclusion.
I pledge to support and encourage my teammates
to support my campus's LGBTQ student group
by volunteering and participating in events.
If you can play in Division III.
I'm a Division III student athlete, and I believe that everyone should be educated on LGBTQ issues.
I pledge to work with my athletic department and my campus to foster dialogue and create a community of support, respect, and pride.
If you can play in Division III.
We are Division III student athletes, and you can be too. If you can play in Division III.
Something I discovered in myself is that if I have a goal, then I can accomplish it.
It's a well-rounded experience.
At a Division III school, you primarily a student athlete, so the school is really shaped around you developing yourself as a complete individual.
It helps a lot that you have a family with your team that can guide you.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at d3hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
Welcome back to Hoopsville. This is Danielle Donahue, Executive Director of the WBCA, and we are a proud partner and very excited about all the future broadcasts. Here's Dave.
Well, thank you very much, and welcome back to Hoopsville, presented by d3hoops.com from the WBCA NABC studios. Hope you're enjoying the show. If you've got questions for us, tweet us at d3hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. Email us, Hoopsville, d3hoops.com. Join us on Facebook, facebook.com/Hoopsville. We're on Instagram at d3hoopsville as well. Lots of ways to interact with us. We hope you'll take advantage of them. We said that a lot of the guests we're going to talk to tonight are in a situation where they've got to win the automatic bid in their conferences, but they've already wrapped up the regular season title, so at least that challenge is going to have to come through them and their home court. And that's kind of the idea here is we want to talk about, hey, you got the big job of the regular season done, but you've still got some work ahead, and that's certainly the case for the Falcons of Concordia-Wisconsin. Stacey Brunner-Jones' team is 20-5 on the season, 17-3, but they got a nice spot in the regional rankings, I believe, as well, as my memory serves. Of course, my brain is a little fuzzy today, as we already talked about. Yeah, they're sitting seventh, which is in kind of a crazy place. The Central is full of good teams. So we go to the Hoopsville hotline, and joining us there is their head coach, Stacey Brunner-Jones. Coach, welcome to Hoopsville.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you taking the time. First and foremost, congratulations. 20 wins is certainly nothing to shake at. Last year, you guys just missed that with 19 wins. The year before that, 22. Kind of been dabbling with 20 wins. It's nice to get to that plateau, I'm sure.
Definitely. It's nice to be back in first place, and yeah, we're happy so far.
Yeah. Finished in the conference 15-5 overall. And I'm sorry, 20-5 overall. 15-5 was last year's record. It was 17-3 this year, and a game ahead of Milwaukee Engineering, Wisconsin Lutheran. You at least got that buffer with them, able to get the big victory over Concordia-Chicago to make sure you could lock that up this time around. How important is it to have wrapped up the regular season so you can come through your place this tournament?
Well, it was great. Yesterday was a big game for us. We had already wrapped up the number 1 seed in the tournament, but to just have the conference title by ourselves was important, and also to win that regular season at home. It was nice. It was good.
I was going to say, yeah, you don't want to share the title. You'd rather own that one straight up. It's a lot better that way. But how important is it to get things to come through John Bruck Fieldhouse? How important is the home court for you guys? You've actually had a lot of the home court the last 6 games. You've been at home 5 of those. How important is it so you don't have to hit the road here?
Well, it's great. I was a little worried about it in the beginning of the season. We had 2 of our conference losses at home, which we weren't too happy about. But then we started turning that around, and just to be able to play at home, and so the players can just have their normal life and don't have to be on the road too much. It's a great feeling. And we have great fans, great band, great cheer and dance team. So it'll be nice to be at home.
Beginning of the season, the games you're talking about, was it Benedictine and Milwaukee Engineering? Unfortunately, dropped those. Those were back at the beginning of January. Your out-of-conference schedule was kind of interesting. You had a nice trip to Puerto Rico where you played 2 pretty good teams in Stockton and the University of New England, and you split there. That had to give you some confidence coming back into the conference season right after that.
It really did, and it's great to take those trips. It's nice to play teams that you normally don't get to play, and to play, a ranked team in New England. And, I think, that Stockton game could have gone either way, and it was a nice trip.
Unfortunately, as we mentioned, you got the Benedictine and Milwaukee Engineering games after that. But then you've been on a tear. You've won, something like 12 of the last 14 games on the regular season. What is it? And you've won in pretty controlling fashions in a lot of those games. For example, 16 points over Concordia-Chicago the other day. What is it about this team the second half of the season, or really maybe the whole season, that has been so dominating, at least it looks like on paper?
Well, I definitely give a huge thank you to our seniors and our 3 captains. When you have seniors that have been a factor for basically 4 years of the program, it just sets the tone for those younger players. And out of everybody in my staff and all the players, I was the only one that had won a conference championship before, and I wanted that for them so badly. And it just kind of been the obviously goal for the whole season, and our seniors have just led the way. So I think we've been, just working every day to get better. And, our SID, he interviews me a lot, and I'm kind of a boring coach. He always asks what we're doing, and it's kind of one day at a time and one game at a time. And I'm pretty big on fundamentals and defense, so we just keep working at it every day.
It's a bit of a young team, Coach. You do have some seniors on it, but you're not surprisingly also led by some underclassmen. A senior in Landgraf at 13.5 points a game, 3 rebounds a game, 2.5 assists a game, nearly 2 steals a game. She's a senior, but then there's a sophomore in Brianna Wagner, 9 points a game as well. So you're getting that leadership from some underclassmen, and that's got to be helpful to the seniors as well.
Definitely, and the sophomores are a huge part of the class, our success. And they did play as freshmen, so that obviously helps. But, there's been times when we've had some freshman sophomores, playing at one time, and I look out there like, oh, what are we doing? But it's nice that they've had some experience, and sometimes I think we're pretty well balanced.
We should mention Maddie Landgraf, 14th player in program history to score 1,000. She got to that mark yesterday, so congratulations to her. Some of the notes that your SID sent me, one of them pointed out the fact that this is the first time you guys have won the outright NACC regular season championship since that 08-09 season. Of course, that's the last time you also made it to the NCAA tournament. And while you say that obviously nobody on this program knows what that is because no one was there then except for yourself, does that make it any less of a pressure or less of an urge to get to the NCAA tournament?
I think the pressure just comes from ourselves, and no one's putting pressure on on us more than our locker room. But it's a good pressure. We talk about pressure a lot and how to work with that and how to use that to our benefit. And, if we continue to just stay one game at a time and just focus on what we're good at. And I know the team's ready for it. They're excited to play again on Thursday. And it's kind of nice to have that bye on Tuesday just to really prepare for Thursday.
Wisconsin Lutheran's been kind of the the team that's led the way recently in this conference quite a bit. You guys beat them twice this season. That's, and obviously they had lost some from last year, but still they've been kind of the behemoth in the conference for a while. You got to build confidence with that. To be able to beat the top team in the conference twice and then walk away with a conference title on top of all of that for the regular season. That's got to be more than just kind of we took care of that business. It's got to make the locker room just a little bit more excited.
Yeah, definitely. The respect that Clay and I have for each other is just great. We're kind of the two that have been on the top in the NAC recently, and since it's actually started, and they've definitely been the team to beat for a long time now, and we respect them, and it's fun to play them. I told him the other night, sometimes our games are in the 50s, but there's just a lot of respect that way, and we enjoy playing them. And when we played them at their place, we played really good defense, and they struggle a little bit offensively, but I knew they'd be ready the second time they played us, and that was obviously on a buzzer beater that we won. And
yeah,
I mean, I could see, actually everybody in our conference tournament really has a chance to win this thing, and we're hoping that we can stay on top and be that team.
I was going to say, even though you're regionally ranked, we talk about that central region is going to be pretty tough. Now, a lot of teams could come out of that central region. Don't get me wrong, but on the flip side of that, do you feel any confidence that you have any chance of being able to get an at-large bid, or do you realize that you're going to have to go win that AQ?
Yeah, I believe our conference is getting better. I do believe each team is improving. I do think people are playing better non-conference games, but the WEAC is obviously in our region, and they're going to get 4 in, it seems like, every year. And so, we know in our conference that we have to continue to improve in that, get, more national rankings and that kind of thing. But I do believe that we will have to win it to go to the big dance.
Talking to Stacey Brunner-Jones, you're the head coach of Concordia-Wisconsin. The Falcons, pretty good season, 20-5. Should point out that's the 5th time that you've won 20 games this season, or in a season, I should say. And obviously playing pretty good basketball. What we mentioned a couple of the top people there, Landgraf and Wagner. Mm-hmm. Who else on this team kind of makes this team click?
Well, Megan Coonan is a senior post player who. Our SID just did an article about just her leadership and her consistency. We can count on her every night to just be consistent. She might score a little bit more or less every game, but her defense and just her consistency is huge. Sammy Blissett is our starting point guard who has been in and out of the lineup just to get her a little bit more consistent. But when she's playing well, we really play well. She can push the ball. She's got a good jumper, but her defense sets the tone, and we're a big defensive team. There are often times where we don't shoot very well. We're in the 30%, and our defense and rebounding really is important to us. And then Audrey Sharmer is a post player who, works well with us, and we're pretty strong and deep in the post, which is helpful, I think, in the D3 level. And yeah, I like our team. I think our team is balanced. I think they get along really well. It's been a really fun year, and I want to keep it going as long as possible.
Yeah, you guys are outscoring your opponents by 11, and you're only allowing them 54.5 points a game. I mean, that's certainly some stellar defense. Obviously, some big games ahead. What's the message to the team in the locker room?
Sorry to be boring again, but just consistency and working one day at a time, and just focus and practice. And I'm just proud of how focused they are. Every day, their attention to detail and just come to work. We kind of have a worker's mentality, and we'll see who we play after Tuesday's game, and just prepare like we normally do. It's different, for a coach. You want to treat it like any other game, but they're 19, 20-year-old kids, and they know how important it is. And it's just nice to be at home, and I think we'll be ready to go.
Well, I certainly wish you luck. Looking forward to seeing what happens with the Falcons, and hope to be talking about you next week in the NCAA tournament automatically, and see how it plays out from there. As always, though, we give the coach the final word. Any final thoughts you want to share with those who may be tuning in?
Well, I just want to thank all the Falcon fans that have just been supportive this year, and I've been here a long time. I'm getting to be one of the older coaches in our department, and just have an awesome athletic department that supports us. Our AD supports us. Our president and his wife come to our games, and I just couldn't be more proud to be the coach of the Falcons, and very excited about hopefully getting this team to the NCAA tournament.
Well, very good, Coach. We're certainly rooting you on, to be sure. Looking forward to seeing how it all plays out. Take care and good luck.
Thank you. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Absolutely. Stacey Brunner-Jones joining us here. Out of the Central Region, of course, Wisconsin at Concordia. The Falcons, again, 20-5 overall. They have the home court advantage, which is certainly important. They want to make sure they can get the automatic bid. They are 7th in the regional rankings. We'll see that change on Wednesday, most likely, as obviously a lot of more games have been played, et cetera, et cetera. We'll see how it all plays out in front of them. But if they move up, that's certainly a good sign that if they were to stumble in the tournament, they'd have a chance at at large. But as you heard, it's tough out of that Central Regions. It's probably going to be a lot easier. It is going to be a lot easier just to go out there and win the AQ. When we come back, take another break. When we come back, we'll go from Wisconsin down to Alabama. We'll talk to Birmingham-Southern. Similar boat with them out of the SAA. Talk to them despite a loss this weekend. How are they positioned for the NCAA tournament? You're listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA NABC studios. We'll be back with more Hoopsville right after this.
Division III schools offer academic scholarships instead of athletic scholarships. This really puts the focus that the student athlete needs to maintain that GPA.
I did receive a non-athletic scholarship upon entering school.
I got the presidential scholarship, which was huge for me.
I think there's more opportunities for academic scholarships in Division III. A lot of people pick schools just based on the sport and don't get that experience.
Being a Division III athlete and developing my leadership skills has definitely put my name out there and helped me get more recognition on campus, but more recognition nationwide. I did win the Jostens Trophy, which is based on leadership, academics, and then how well you do on the court.
I'm also the Schwartz Scholar of my class. Schwartz Scholarship is basically a scholarship that is given to a student who's identified as a likely leader.
At the end of the day, it won't matter how they play on the field, it will matter how they do in the classroom.
I used to never really talk, ever. I was afraid if I said something wrong, everyone would laugh at me. But then I started to play golf with Special Olympics. It helped me to find my voice. And now everyone else is speechless.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at D3Hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
For the love of the game. That's what it's all about, they say. But for those of us who are Division III student athletes, it's more than that.
It's more about team and the schools and communities we represent.
And for the many of us blessed with the strength to compete in sport at the college level, we understand that with what we were given comes a special obligation.
Our obligation to help those who have their own special needs and whose love for the game is no less intense.
That is why NCAA Division III teamed up with Special Olympics. Since August of 2011, we and others from Division III campus communities have volunteered more than 250,000 hours, time away from the classroom and practice field, reaching across the country to coach and mentor Special Olympics athletes.
And to learn that in giving, we receive so much more in return. Help us keep that dream alive.
Be part of it.
Get involved.
You can make a difference.
And welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody. Hope you're enjoying the show. You're listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA and ABC studios. If you got questions for us, tweet us at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. Email us, hoopsville at D3Hoops.com. Join us on Facebook at Facebook.com/Hoopsville. Instagram at D3Hoopsville. We've named off most of those. You can probably figure out how to get it from there. So lots to talk about, obviously, and we've been covering quite a bit so far. The real trick is trying to understand where teams fit. Can they make it in as an at-large? Can they get it done maybe with just winning the AQ? Obviously, they can get it done winning the AQ by themselves, but there's a lot of what-ifs in between now and then. So that's kind of our theme tonight. We now go from the central region with Concordia-Wisconsin there, and I want to thank Stacey Brunner-Jones for joining us. We now slide down and into Alabama, talking about Birmingham-Southern program, who's in the middle of a really good race in the SAA. You got to remember, this is a program who back in 2014-15 were 11-15 and 4-10 in SAA play. Well, they just wrapped up the regular season emphatically with a 21-3 record this season and 11-3 in conference play. The tournament is going to have to come through them this time, and you know Mike Ricks and his squad is thrilled about that. So joining us on the Hoopsville Hotline is Mike Ricks. And Coach, congratulations on a terrific season and the SAA regular season crown.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it. It's been a fun ride, better than I think any of us expected coming in.
I'm sure. I was going to say, I'm sure the goal at the beginning of the season was win the regular season crown, but 21-3, that might have been a little bit audacious.
I think we would have been setting our sights a little high, but I think that the girls have just done a tremendous job of buying into what we wanted to do when we came in. And then just played tremendously throughout the course of the season to get us to this point.
Talk to me about this season. I mean, you started off the season tremendously well. You took your first loss back on January 10th, believe it or not. 2-point loss on the road to Oglethorpe. You then, 5 games later, lost your second one to Rhodes, and then unfortunately just lost the other night to Hendricks. So these sporadic quality losses, let's call them, between the beginning of the season and now. It's hard to gauge what that means for a team. So from your point of view, what do those losses and what does the season mean?
I think number one, it means that our league tournament is going to be a heck of a fight. There's some teams in there that can beat anybody on any given night. Hendricks obviously is a tremendously talented team, and Rhodes has been there. I mean, I think they've won the last 3 league championships.
Yeah.
And Coach Dean does a great job with them. And, I mean, Coach Ritchie over at Oglethorpe, I think they're the only team in the league to beat both of us. and so, they're tough losses. Today was a tough loss to Hendricks. They did a great job. They came in here and pulled out a tough one, especially after a tough loss at Millsaps on Friday night for them. And so I think what it means is that being good is hard, and we've talked about that with our kids a lot, to go from being in 8th place to being in 1st place in the span of a couple of months. We're still figuring out how to compete when you're on top. And I mean, and we talk about how look at a program like Millsaps or Rhodes, who have been perennially very competitive in our league. And I'm new to the league, so this is kind of just what I've gathered from talking to different people, and it takes time to get there and be able to figure out how to play when everybody's gunning for you, and I think our girls have done a tremendous job of stepping up to the plate, with the exception of those 3 losses, and really, you look at the scores of those games, and they're all close. They were all tough dog fights of games, and it just goes to show what a talented league that we are in, and how well coached everybody is. You have to be ready every single night.
Hey, I mean, you just, as you said, you're new to this. You got hired back in April, took over this program. You were at the University of St. Thomas in Houston, Texas prior to this. What was it about this program and their situation that enticed you so much?
A couple of things. The facilities, number one, and I'll start by saying I had a great job at St. Thomas and worked with great people, and we started that program from scratch. So the decision to leave was very, very tough. My family's from Houston, my wife's family is from Houston, and we really agonized over it. And I'm lucky that my wife was willing to come and take this chance with me. And my very first boss as a high school coach grew up with the AD at Birmingham-Southern and had called me and asked me if I'd be interested in him calling our athletic director, Joe Dean, on my behalf. And I said, I really don't know. We have a good thing at St. Thomas. The team that I was coaching there, we had an international trip planned for this past summer, and I said, so I really don't know. And he said, well, look at the website, look at the campus, and I looked at it, and you start looking at the football stadium and the athletic facilities, and the fact that you have 95% of your students living on campus, and I called him back and I said, I'm going to apply, so if you'd be willing to call, that'd be terrific. And so it's been kind of a whirlwind coming from St. Thomas, but we did good things there, and I think everything that we did there, at least for me as a head coach and running a basketball program, the growth that program that we went through with that program helped to set us up, or set me up to kind of come in and at least have a plan of attack for what we were going to do this year.
But how much did you know about the conference race that you're about to walk into, and what was going to this is going to entail? Obviously, we talked about that Birmingham-Southern team, 11-15, 4-10 in the SAA just a couple of years ago.
Right.
But how much did you realize, with the Millsaps and the Rhodes and Hendricks and the toughness that has been at the top of this conference the last few years?
I knew about Hendrick. I knew all the schools. Just because you're in small college basketball at the NAI level or the D3 level, you learn a lot about different schools that are out there. And I knew who Coach Winkleman was at Millsaps and what a job he'd done. And I knew who Coach Dean was at Rhodes and on down the line. And so I knew, and that's where, we kind of looked at it when I first got the job and started watching film. And I said, this is a good league. It's going to be tough. And so I knew it was going to be an uphill climb. We kind of thought, hopefully we come in and maybe we get a couple more wins than we had last year, and then we get our first recruiting class in, and we start to grow it, and then in a couple of years we'll be players in the league. And it just happened quicker than any of us ever could have imagined, and that's what's made it so fun and exciting and rewarding for the girls that were here last year. They have a chance to host a conference tournament. We share the regular season conference championship with Millsaps, and to me, I still can't really put it to words, but I give all credit to our players for doing the work and buying in, and to our assistant coaches for basically not letting me do anything stupid. They kept help us to keep it simple, but really we have a great situation here, and everyone's been so supportive. It's been really a dream season for a first season, especially.
Yeah, sure. I was going to say, for that first season, to come where you guys are is certainly impressive. 8-2 in your last 10. Of course, Millsaps 9-1 in their last 10. Hendricks is 7-3 in their last 10. So, top three, certainly playing some really good basketball and separated yourselves from Rhodes and the rest of the crew. Let's talk about this team. You've got quite a bit of upperclassmen kind of leading the way. Is it Yorisha Bryant?
Yes, sir. Yes, Yorisha Bryant.
Senior, 16.5 points a game, nearly over 9 rebounds a game, assists plus a game, steal and a half a game, block and a half a game. Jasmine Batts, 10 points a game, 3 rebounds a game, 2 assists a game. Certainly, certainly versatile there as a junior. Haley Knowles, the senior, 9 points a game. Is it Jamise Holmes?
Yes, it is.
Junior at 7.5 points a game, and then a senior and Ashley Curry at 7 points a game. And obviously, they're pulling down their rebounds, getting some assists there as well. Knowles has 3 assists a game. Curry has about 3 assists a game as well. So a lot of seniors and juniors leading the way there. That's got to help as a first-year head coach to have that kind of leadership.
Absolutely. To have a senior and junior heavy team is I think every coach would be happy to have that. And when we got here, we were surprised to find out when we started practice how much we actually had to work with, and so we just tried to give them a defensive identity, give them an offensive identity, and then stay out of their way. But you talk about Yorisha Bryant. She is, in my opinion, she's and she's got tough company with a couple other players in our league, but she's one of the top 3 players in the league. We're partial; we think she's the best one, but obviously, you have a couple others who can stake a claim to that title, and she's been. I don't know if you know the story on Euretia, but this is her first year playing. And she has been going to school here for the last 3 years, and just for whatever reason, after high school, was burned out on it and just wanted to go to school, and walked into our office and on one of our first days and expressed an interest in playing basketball. And really, we have a student assistant who brought her by, and so we give him a lot of credit for his first recruit. But he brought her to us and said he had a friend that was interested in playing, and she, we talked to her a little bit about, we're really going to try to build a program here, so you have to be willing to be on board for that since you're a senior, 1 year deal. And I'll tell you what, I've coached good players, and she is, one of the best, and she is a terrific teammate, which has made it easier, when you have your best players being great teammates. But we've gotten contributions from everybody that you listed, and then more people down the line. Obviously, Ashley and Haley are two seniors that we have that have been here, that have been through some of the down times too, and have stepped up big time this year. And then Jasmine and Jamise are two juniors who round out our starting lineup, who have had monster games at different times this year, but have also been very, very consistent. And then there's always someone different. Euretia kind of gets most of the attention because of her numbers and because of what she's able to do, but there's always a secondary, another scorer or a third scorer that steps up and is ready to play. And we've been fortunate, except for 3 times where we've had everybody do that. And then even in the games where we haven't won, they've been focused. They've been trying to do the right things, the things that we teach them, and that's just kind of part of the process. It's very, very hard to go undefeated.
Yeah. Is Brian? We should find a way to get her some extra eligibility. That's all.
I think graduation is at the top of her list. She's a terrific student, and I think medical school is on the horizon for her.
Whew, that's impressive. Well, hey, that's what's awesome about Division III. Let's be honest.
Absolutely,
being able to do that. But this is a conference that has just missed out on some at-large bids. I realize you're kind of new to some of this process, but do you? You guys you're regionally ranked number 4 heading into the weekend.
Right.
And obviously we got one more set of regional rankings. How you may shift around in that with a loss to Hendricks is anybody's guess. But I have a feeling the message to the team is we need to go out and win this thing.
It is. You don't want to leave it up to, I think it's like any level of Division I. You don't want to put it in, and I don't know if it's a committee or not, but you don't want to put that kind of decision in the committee's hands if you can avoid it. And we accomplished a couple of, midway through the year, I think we kind of realized we might have something special going on, and we, a goal of being able to host the conference tournament and win a conference championship was something that at some point we started talking about, and so just to be able to have that opportunity and to play at home, to play in front of our family and friends and fans, and you couldn't ask for a better opportunity. Now, does that mean it's going to be easy? Absolutely not. We found that out today, and we found that out a couple other times this year. And you look around the scores just from all the games every weekend in our league, and there's always close games. There's always surprises, and it just goes to show that every single game is a different entity, and you have to be ready to play regardless of what you did against them last time or what they did against you last time. Everyone has to hit the reset button, and it's a new season.
It's certainly going to be fascinating to see what you guys can do here. What can you take from earlier in this season? Can you take anything from games against Emory and games against, you played Emory twice, interestingly enough. I didn't know you guys had joined the UAA. I just kid.
I think one of them was a tournament game.
Yeah, I realize. But can you take anything from other points of the season and now use it? Or is this really about, listen, we know these teams well, we've played them already, stick to what we know best versus trying to re-tinker the system, as it were?
Well, I think, we're a team who, when we first got here, I felt like this group needed an identity. Who are we going to be offensively? Who are we going to be defensively? And I learned that lesson at St. Thomas through my first 2 years, is we have to have something that we can hang our hat on. And so obviously some tinkering here or there, but I think that the key is, the one thing that we haven't done after losses is overreact. We've been successful. there's little things that we can tweak and do better. Obviously, you're always trying to get better until the final game, whenever that may be. And so I think that you can certainly take stuff from all throughout the year, especially for a group that finished in 8th place last year. Yeah. Emory, I know Emory's in a tough league, and I'm not sure where they stand in their league right now. I know it's been a tough one, but they're a good team. And they've played a lot of the teams in our league and done very well against them. So I think you can take something from that, and you can take something from being able to win at Hendricks on the road, being able to win at Millsaps on the road. I mean, you can go back and if you want to talk about points to provide confidence for our group, there's plenty of them. And then there's some opportunities for motivation, too, and for improvement to look at some of those games that you didn't play as well, whether you won or lost, and you take away the good things and try to correct the mistakes that you made and just move on. I mean, it's a short season right now, so it has to be about, going into this week for us, resetting a little bit, but just also remembering, that we've had a pretty good year and we've proven that we can play with anybody on our schedule when we do things at a high level. And so that's kind of going to be our focus moving forward, and just to enjoy the opportunity we're hosting and to just one game at a time.
The one thing is, obviously, Hendricks beat you at home. It's the first home loss of the season. The other 3 were all on the road.
Right.
And you obviously are going to be at home for this conference tournament the rest of the way. Can you regain that mojo that home has brought you already, or does a game like Hendricks almost shake you guys a little bit? I'm not trying to be negative. I just mean,
no. I understand your question. I think we can definitely hit the reset button. Because we had to do it twice this year, and I mean, and this is where I talk about how learning to win and winning is hard. Where you lose at Oglethorpe on the road by 2, and they did a tremendous job down the stretch to beat us. You hit the reset button, and we roll off 5 more in a row, and then we lose at Rhodes going into the weekend, thinking, okay, we're going to Rhodes and we're going to Hendricks. It's a big weekend, and we lose that game, and we're able to come back 2 days later and win by 12 at Hendricks. So this group is fully capable of hitting the reset button, and that's where we try to. It was a tough loss. It's a tough loss, but we try to, at least for me, we try to underreact a little bit, and it's one game. We've and it's a 4-point loss. It's a 2-point loss. It's a 5-point loss. So every single time that we've lost, they've had to, teams have had to play their butts off against us, and we've been right there. And so, does it mean we'll win the tournament? Who knows? But I think it means that we're doing some things that can put us in positions to win every time we step out on the floor. And that's really just what it's all about. Is if we have a chance in the last 2 minutes, what more can you ask for after being in 8th place last year and hosting a conference tournament? So I absolutely believe that we can hit the reset button, and we will, and we'll be ready to go on Friday.
Speaking of 8th place, you're playing Barry, who's in 8th place, 8-17 overall in the season, 2-12 in conference action. How hard is it to keep the team from overlooking Barry and going, we're playing the 8th seed. They're 2 and whatever in the conference. This is about the semifinals coming up after that.
Right. Well, we lost today, so I don't think that'll be
exactly.
too
I mean,
hard to do. It's
right.
You can treat it as a downer, or you can treat it as maybe the kick in the teeth that we needed right before the tournament.
Sure.
And so, I mean, I think for me that would have been harder to do if we'd won today. So that's kind of how we'll treat that. But at the same time, you can't overlook Barry. We just played them, and they did a great job against us. We won the game, but it certainly wasn't easy. And you can say the same for all of our conference games.
And then the final thing would be you're playing triple games here in a weekend. If you get to the championship game, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, how hard is it? And granted, you may not have been through this, so this question may be completely something you can't answer, but how hard is it to almost pace your team, to get them the rest they need without overexerting, even though you need to win every single game?
That's a tough one, because you kind of are living one day at a time, and it's survive in advance. So
right,
we'll do what we need to do to try to get ourselves ready to play on Friday, and then when the game starts on Friday, we're going to do everything in our power to try to win that game, and then we'll figure it out from there. I mean, I really think that's kind of how everybody will treat it.
Sure.
You can't say, "Oh, well, we're going to manage minutes," and then you you got to treat everybody the same. And so, our entire focus, leading up to Friday is going to be trying to figure out how to beat Barry, and they're going to be doing the same exact thing, getting ready for us. And so, and then if we're fortunate enough to be able to hold serve and bounce back, then we'll worry about step 2. But right now it just has to be about, really for us, it has to be about practice first, and then it has to be about Friday. Let's figure it out and try to win one basketball game on Friday. Because I think what the trap you can fall into is to make it about 3 games instead of just 1 game, and you start looking ahead and you start thinking about, what if we make it to the championship game? It's just about Friday and trying to figure out how to beat Barry.
Well, I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you taking the time, and congratulations on one heck of a turnaround. And congratulations on obviously getting the tournament to come through your doors. It's certainly easier to come through Birmingham, Alabama than to travel anywhere else in your mind, I am sure.
Absolutely.
As always, we give the coach the final word. Any final thoughts you'd like to share with those who may be tuning in?
Like I said before, the credit goes to our players, assistant coaches, and all of our friends and families who have supported us, and then also to my wife. She was willing to move to Birmingham and take a chance on a new job in a new city and find a new job herself, and it's been a wonderful adventure for us so far. So we appreciate everything. Thankful to be on the show, and I've listened before, and I think you do a great job. So thank you for having me.
Well, thank you, Coach. Appreciate the kind words. Congratulations again, and welcome to the neighborhood, as it were, for you in the Birmingham area.
Well,
we'll look forward to seeing what happens this week. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Mike Ricks joining us from Birmingham-Southern, again, the women's team, 21-3, 11-3 in conference. Heck of a story there. We'll be hosting the tournament. It's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday tournament next weekend. They will take on Barry in the first game, obviously the semifinals then. Traditional bracket, 1v8, 2v7, et cetera, et cetera. So they will be taking on the 4 seed should it hold pattern, or the 5 seed in the second game should they win. Obviously, that's how it all play out. They'll play Sunday for the conference championship, et cetera. Before we take a break, I got a question regarding the Central Region and the MIAC men and women. Says, when you get time, do you think the MIAC men's and women's tournaments are both wide open? What do you think Whitewater women are viable for an at-large bid, having lost 6 of their last 13? I do think the WIAC tournament is wide open. As much as lacrosse had a good season on the men's side, I don't think they're a lock to win it. In any way, shape, or form. I think even, earlier this week is kind of a testament to that. I think on the women's side, as much as Oshkosh is playing well, them losing as well shows you that they're vulnerable. I will say I think Whitewater women are in trouble to get in. I think WIAC could have had 4 teams if Whitewater had played a little stronger down the end, but losing half of the last 13 games of the season is going to put them in a little bit of trouble. And I think they need to go win the automatic bid. If Whitewater wins the automatic bid, I think 4 teams from the women's side get in. On the men's side, it's 1 bid and 1 bid only. So that'll even make it more wide open because nobody's got anything to lose, if that makes any sense. I think they're both wide open. Obviously, you go with who won the regular season as being the favorite since it's going through their gyms technically. I think Whitewater women have put themselves in a bit of a bind here. And it's interesting because the chair of the committee is on, this Whitewater's coach. If they are at the table, she comes off the call. And that could have ramifications down with who gets at-large bids in general when the chair of the committee can't even participate. So that's got a lot of ramifications involved in that. So we'll keep an eye on how that all plays out this week. We're going to take another break. When we come back, we'll be talking more at-large scenarios for teams who've won regular seasons. We're going to switch gears, talk men's basketball with SUNY Old Westbury out of the Atlantic region. They won the Skyline region regular season, but they're going to have to win an AQ as well to get into the NCAA tournament. We'll talk to their head coach, Coach Tomlin, coming up. You're listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA and ABC studios. Should point out our last 2 guests joining us on the City of Salem hotline. Of course, City of Salem hosting the 20th Men's Division III Basketball Championship weekend. Will hand out their 19th men's basketball title coming up in a few weeks. Should also point out they just got rewarded the 2017 and 18 Division III Women's Lacrosse Championship weekends as well. More titles coming through Championship City in Salem, Virginia, in the Roanoke Valley. Get your tickets today for the men's basketball championships coming up in about a month. You're listening to Hoopsville. We'll be back with more right after this.
I used to never really talk. Ever. I was afraid if I said something wrong, everyone would laugh at me. But then I started to play golf with Special Olympics. It helped me to find my voice. And now everyone else is speechless.
With every basket and every stop, the skill of elite student athletes will be on display. The sights, the sounds, the intensity of an NCAA championship. It all comes down to this moment, and the winner takes it all. Be there to share the experience with your family and friends. The 2016 NCAA Division III Men's Basketball Championship, March 18th and 19th at Salem Civic Center in Salem, Virginia. Visit ncaa.com/tickets to score your championship seats today.
College basketball lives in Kansas City at the College Basketball Experience at Sprint Center. The College Basketball Experience is the place to get your game on. It's not a museum, it's an experience you won't forget. Discover the history of the game in the National Collegiate Basketball Hall of Fame, featuring the Gallery of Honor, Mentor's Circle, and Honor Theater. Suit up in the latest CBE logoed Nike gear at the CBE Hoop Shop. Elevate your game today and visit the house that college basketball built.
With every basket and every stop, the skill of elite student athletes will be on display. The sights, the sounds, the intensity of an NCAA championship. It all comes down to this moment, and the winner takes it all. Be there to share the experience with your family and friends. The 2016 NCAA Division III Men's Basketball Championship, March 18th and 19th at Salem Civic Center in Salem, Virginia. Visit ncaa.com/tickets to score your championship seats today.
And welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody. Hope you're enjoying this Sunday show. Of course, in a week, we will be full on at this point, trying to figure out who's in and who's out of the NCAA tournament. Well, we'll know who's out, but who may be in on top of the automatic qualifiers. Of course, conference tournaments already getting started. We've been talking about that all show, and other conferences are now getting into it. We have all but one conference at this point who's going to have a conference tournament to decide their champs, and even they may have an unofficial title game. So lots to talk about today, next Thursday, and then obviously coming up next Sunday. And of course, we'll also have a special on Monday the 29th following the brackets being announced to talk about it all and talk to the regional committees, etc. You can follow us here out of the WBCA NABC studios via Twitter at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. Email us, hoopsville@d3hoops.com. Join us on Facebook, facebook.com/Hoopsville. You can also join us on Instagram at D3Hoopsville. I think I mentioned email, but just in case, it's hoopsville@d3hoops.com. We try and monitor all those and answer your questions throughout the show. You can even ask our guests questions. Going to slide into the Atlantic region now, talk some men's basketball. One team, really one conference we haven't talked a lot about the Atlantic because the headlines have been taken by the CUNYAC and the NJAC, and in some ways even the MAC Freedom, is the Skyline, the other conference in the region. And if no one's noticed, quietly, SUNY Old Westbury walked away with the regular season conference title by 2 games. They will be hosting the conference tournament, though they don't know who they'll be playing just yet, but you know they like to be playing at home. Figured we better check in with the Skyline on the men's side, and furthermore, check in with the Panthers themselves. So joining us on the City of Salem Skype hotline is Bernard Tomlin, their head coach. Coach, welcome to Hoopsville, sir.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
I appreciate you taking the time. First and foremost, congratulations. It was a rough start to the season, but once you guys got into conference play, you seemed to settle down.
It was a rough start. We were putting together a new group, and we're excited. They've made a lot of progress. Yeah,
you guys started the season, unfortunately, losing 4 or 5 games. Arcadia, Moravian, Brooklyn, and St. Joseph's of Brooklyn unceremoniously beat you guys. And the Arcadia game was close. The rest of them really weren't. You did get a win against St. Joseph's of Long Island there in the middle. But then you guys settled in. Like I said, you got into conference play. You even got a win out of conference against York. Hard-fought battle against Lycoming. Got back on the wagon, as it were, against St. Lawrence. And besides a couple slip-ups to Sage and St. Joseph's of Long Island, who just clearly has your number, you guys had a pretty good run through it.
Well, we're excited. You know, we had a combination of old and new.
Yeah.
And when you bring in new athletes, there's always that adjustment period. And At this point in time, I'm starting to feel very comfortable with this group.
What is it about? I mean, obviously, you have a lot of conference games you have to play. I mean, 20 of them is really incredible. You only get 5 out of conference games. So, what is it that you try and do with those 5 out of conference games? Because there isn't much you can do to strengthen your SOS there. Is it an element of trying to just kind of prepare for your conference? Is it a matter of breaking the cobwebs out of the early part of the season? What's your mentality with those games?
Well, we always try to play as strong a non-conference schedule as we can, but more importantly for me is that my guys get a chance to see what college basketball is all about. We will take road trips. This year, our road trip just happened to be to NYU, which is in Manhattan, and we enjoy that, because even though we're a local team, a lot of the young men don't get to go into the city and experience Manhattan the way we do in a tournament setting. And then we went, of course, to Williamsport. And in the past, we've gone all the way out to the West Coast. We played Whitman, Lewis and Clark. So I think it's a combination of things that we like to try to do with those non-league games.
Obviously, you kind of stayed close to home with Arcadia and Moravian. Of course, those games were played in New York City, which it makes it a little bit more convenient for you. You also, let's see, Brooklyn, as we mentioned, St. Joseph's of Brooklyn's out of, I'm sorry, that's in conference. York, you went to Williamsport, you went to Lycoming,
right,
up in northern central Pennsylvania, so that's about as far as you went. So you at least stayed somewhat close to home this time around.
Right.
What was the conference race, though, like for you guys? Obviously, St. Joseph's of Long Island might be a team you don't want to see in the conference a tournament necessarily, since they beat you twice, and granted, they're not necessarily in it, but how is the rest of this conference kind of shook up for you guys?
Well, it's interesting because you mentioned St. Joe, and there are 2 St. Joes in our league.
Right.
We got St. Joe of Brooklyn, and we lost to them on the road, and we also lost to St. Joe of Patchogue on the road. So I think what happens when you play everybody twice, and we're all so close, teams get real familiar with each other. And so they really become wars. A lot of the coaches are familiar with the players during the recruiting process, so they know a little bit more about some of my guys maybe than even I do, and we enjoy it. So we pretty much know what to expect when we play Farmingdale, St. Joe, Patchogue, Maritime. All those schools are within a 25-mile radius. So. Yeah, it's interesting.
We should mention Patchogue. We refer to him as Long Island for anybody who might be looking at your schedule. Just everyone has different references, and right. I got confused there. I had you down for a loss against Long Island and a loss against Brooklyn, and I thought it was the same darn team for some reason in my head there for a moment.
No problem.
It happens to the best of us. Interesting enough, of course, St. Joseph's of Maine is on our show tonight, so we're tripling down on the St. Joe's. You also have Yeshiva. You have a different schedule with them because of their religious holidays. You have Sage in this conference, which gets you all the way up to Albany. So you kind of have some quirks with the schedule, as it were, that you're constantly having to adjust to. You don't necessarily always play on the same days every single week in this conference.
No, it's interesting, and with the weather conditions, it's also sometimes a challenge.
Yeah.
This week we had a snow out, and the game that we played on Tuesday against Yeshiva was a game that should have been played last week. So we ended up with 3 games this week, and some people would say it's an NBA type schedule when you play Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. And fortunately for our guys, we were able to survive and win 2 of those games. But Yeshiva presents an interesting problem because they usually don't play on Friday. They don't play on Friday, and then they play late on Saturday. So their Saturday games are at 8:30 at night, and that's pretty much a starting time that not many teams are used to.
I was going to say, like I said, a different mix, and of course, Sage was in the schedule. Granted, at your place. The other thing you guys had is you kind of had a mix of road and away games in the last few weeks. Just in the month of February, you had an away game, then 2 home games, 2 away games, and now 2 home games to finish the season. Obviously, staying at home is important. Is it nice to finally get that road kind of warrior and that mentality away from you guys a little bit now that you can settle in at home for the conference tournament?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. I think even when you're traveling locally, just the whole sequence of things that goes on during a game day, vans, we travel vans locally. the navigation of traffic patterns in New York is so unpredictable. So having the comfort of playing at home certainly is an advantage.
Let's talk about your team just a little bit. Obviously, this is a squad. You said it's a mix of young and old, as it were. A whole mess of juniors on this team. You got a handful of seniors as well, and then certainly a drop off after that of that young group, as it were. Before I get into who's leading the team necessarily in points and all of that stuff, who are the guys who stand out for you in your mind, or at least if I'm watching the game, are going to jump out at me?
Well, our leading scorer is a tremendous athlete, and one of the things that happens when you have kids that have exceptional talent is that you have a tendency to try to make sure that everybody else stays involved. And right now, PJ Page is a senior who has really played well for us. Our point guard, our leader, is Stefan Odell. And those two guys, I think are kind of our unsung heroes because they haven't had the notoriety of our best player, but more importantly, they've made significant contributions.
Stanley leads the team, 22 points a game, essentially 9.3 rebounds a game, 3 assists a game. Quick math tells me he's got well over 3 steals a game as well, and averages about a block and a half a game. Is there anything he can't do for you guys? He even shoots the 3-pointer half well.
He's played probably some of the best basketball that's ever been played at the college, and the statistics will say that.
Yeah.
But the impact he's had, on our team is something that we haven't really experienced since 2013. I had an All-American, Tyreek Tucker, who also, was the kind of player that, at certain nights can just carry the load. So we're excited about that, and we're excited about the fact that our other guys are really bonding with him, and hopefully we can go all the way.
Obviously, outside of him, you also have PJ Page, 12 points a game, 10.5 points from Lyle Riles. Or is it? How do I say Lyle's last name?
Riles.
It is Riles. Okay. Both of those solid rebounders as well. And then you mentioned Odell, Stefan Odell, 8 points a game, 3.3 rebounds, 2.5 assists a game on top of that. So what I find interesting, though, is, Coach, I look at your lineup, and you have played a whole host of players this season. You have tried all kinds of different starting lineups. Is that based on the young and the old that you were dealing with? Is it coupled by injuries or circumstances?
It's really comes down to, my goal is always to get as many athletes on the floor as I can. And I'll tell the guys that on a daily basis, I am rank ordering in practice. and we pretty much, allow that room for growth. So we've tried different lineups, and we're consistently looking to get better. And some of my younger players, especially the big guys, they just need some experience. They're very green.
It's certainly, gosh, I mean, I could do the math, but there's just a whole mess of guys who have played in games. That is certainly an advantage throughout the season. But at this point in the year, you start shortening the bench. A lot of coaches will start shortening their bench a little bit. And you get into the conference tournament, and obviously, should you be playing in the NCAA tournament? Is that a mentality you may have, that some of these guys who have gotten some playing time may start losing a little bit that? Because now, I mean, the competitive edge now is obviously very, very paper thin. There isn't much wiggle room. A loss and you're done.
It's true. And again, like I said, it's a rank order on a daily basis. But at this point in time, it's either you've learned your lessons or you still have some things to learn. And we do have a tendency to be a little more conservative, especially in the big games.
Now that's the other trick. We talked off air before we started. 2013, the last time you guys won the conference regular season, went into the tournament, lost in the semifinals to Farmingdale State, who, interesting enough, just the other day beat you guys as well. And that ended your hopes of making the NCAA tournament after a tremendous season. I realize not a lot of the guys from that team are probably on the team now. You are, though. I'm sure some of your other coaches are. I'm sure that is a memory for all of you. But in your opinion, is that how much is that a topic of conversation that, you know what, we need to get the job done? This is not over yet.
Well, the one thing that as a coach you do realize that you not only do you have to be good, you have to be blessed. And that year we had some minor injuries. Some of our guys were nicked up, and we just weren't ready for battle. So, hopefully we're blessed this year and we keep everybody healthy. And my feeling is that if everyone stays healthy, that this will be our year.
Interestingly enough, you don't know who you'll get. You'll get either Yeshiva or Purchase coming up, as they'll play the 4-5 game to get a chance to play you guys. What do you know about? I mean, not what do you know about? You know those teams darn well. But what do you expect from either of those? It seems to me on paper like you could literally get two different kinds of teams depending on who comes out of there.
Well, Yeshiva is a very, very talented team. They play a cerebral game. They're going to move the basketball. They're going to take good shots. They play a great brand of man-to-man defense. So that matchup, is always a challenge. And Purchase is a very large team. They're the top rebounding team in the conference. So it's two totally different games. One game will be like a power game, where we're going to have to make sure we block out, on every shot. And then, versus Yeshiva, we're going to have to play a cerebral game. They play with a lot of intelligence, and our guys really have to, be comfortable guarding their man as well as the ball.
Sure. How much has this conference changed? Obviously, back in 2013, you guys were on top. Purchase was there. Farmingdale State, Mount St. Mary. Sage was, about middle of the road. So was Yeshiva. Nice over, about 500 records, maybe below 500 records. You go back even further to 2011. Purchase was on top. I mean, Sage was kind of near the bottom. So was Yeshiva. They're now in the conversation. Farmingdale State remains, but Purchase and St. Joe's, all of them have kind of sunk a little bit while the Sage and Yeshivas have emerged. Is this just the evolution of this conference?
I think so. There have been some coaching changes, some changes in philosophy. But for the most part, a lot of young coaches who are coming in and they're hungry. So I expect the conference to continue to improve.
You obviously realize you're probably not getting in the NCAA tournament unless you get in the AQ. The at-large bid is probably not even a reality for you guys. Is that tough to handle when you have so many conference games that limits your ability to change that equation in some ways?
Not really. At this point, we what we say to our guys is theoretically, at the beginning of the season, everyone has a chance to win a national championship.
Mm-hmm.
And our goal is to go to the big dance. And so we're focused on that.
I'm talking here with Bernard Tomlin, head coach of SUNY Old Westbury. Coach, this is your 15th year, I believe, at Old Westbury, 25th overall. You certainly know the Atlantic region well. You coached at William Patterson ever so briefly at one point, too. How much has the Atlantic region changed? There's been a lot of conversation about how the NJAC has had to deal over the years with the D2s in the region kind of re-emerging, as it were. The talent has shifted to a different direction. And it's turned into the Atlantic to not be as nationally competitive as it has been. I think that's changing. I think in the last few years we have seen that evolve and the Atlantic get better. But from your point of view, you've been there for a long time. How much has the Atlantic region evolved?
Well, you're getting some strong play from teams like Brooklyn College. I think they're an excellent basketball team. Staten Island College is an excellent basketball team. And so I think you're getting some teams from the CUNY, that, have been there recently, but I think each year they're starting to show that they can do it consistently. And then the NJAC has always been, the stronger league in our area. Jersey City's good, Rutgers Newark. So you get the NJAC, the influence of the NJAC, and I think the combination of having some teams evolve from the CUNY will make it a very interesting year.
Well, Coach, I appreciate you coming on the show and talking about the Panthers. Certainly fun to have you back on the show and talk about you guys and see what's going on. Obviously, big week ahead. We've got to get through this, and I know next Sunday you hope you're going to be dancing the NCAA tournament with an AQ, but obviously some work to get done before then. As always, though, we give the coach the final word. Any final thoughts you want to share with those who may be tuning in?
Well, anyone and everyone that supports Old Westbury basketball, we appreciate it, and we want you to come out. We play on Thursday at 7. Not sure of who our opponent will be, and our goal is to go all the way. And we do wish all the teams out there that are competing for the league titles the best of health.
Well, great to have you, Coach. As I said, congratulations again on the Skyline regular season championship, and good luck in the tournament. Looking forward to seeing how you guys do this year.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate you having us.
Absolutely. Bernard Tomlin joining us here on Hoopsville. Again, the team is 17-8 overall, 16-4. Tough start to the season, but rolled since then. Conference tournament certainly ahead. A lot of expectations for any regular season champs, and obviously the Old Westbury would love to get that AQ to get into the NCAA tournament as well. When we come back, plenty more Hoopsville. We'll even take your questions. We'll jump into the Mid-Atlantic at one point in this show, talk about the conference tournaments coming up, and look at other conference tournaments and see who may just be dancing come Sunday and who may be the dark horses as well. You're listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com. For the WBCA NABC studios, more Hoopsville right after this.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at D3Hoops.com at www.D3Hoops.com.
For the love of the game. But for those of us who are Division III student athletes, it's more than that, a lot more.
Sure, the game is important, but as we work so hard to build both mind and body, it's more about team.
That is why NCAA Division III teamed up with Special Olympics, and in giving the gift of sport to those for whom it seemed an impossible dream, we are working to make this a better world.
Help us keep that dream alive.
You can make a difference.
College basketball lives in Kansas City at the College Basketball Experience at Sprint Center. The College Basketball Experience is the place to get your game on. It's not a museum, it's an experience you won't forget. Discover the history of the game in the National Collegiate Basketball Hall of Fame, featuring the Gallery of Honor, Mentor Circle, and Honor Theater. Suit up in the latest CBE logoed Nike gear at the CBE Hoop Shop. Elevate your game today and visit the house that college basketball built. College basketball lives in Kansas.
And welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody. Hope you're enjoying the show. You're watching Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA NABC studio. If you've got questions for us, tweet us at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. Email us hoopsville at D3Hoops.com or join us on Facebook, Facebook.com/Hoopsville. We're also on Instagram at D3Hoopsville as well. I do have a couple questions that have hit our email, and we will get to those as we can, including somebody who felt I was a little too harsh about Franklin and Marshall. So be it, but they lost again. So I don't think my statements about Franklin and Marshall the other day were all that unharsh. We'll talk more about them, though, coming up. Ryan Scott will join us out of the Mid-Atlantic region. We'll get a breakdown of the region and the tournaments up ahead with Ryan shortly. Going to switch gears, not really switch gears. We're keeping up the same topic. It's teams who've won the regular season conference title or secured home court advantage in the conference tournaments with pretty much the stake that they've got to win the AQ coming up. That is certainly the case for our next guest, St. Joe's of Maine, in what was a tremendous GNAC race. If you weren't watching on the women's sides, Johnson and Wales, St. Joseph's of Maine, and Emmanuel finished in a three-way tie, all at 10-1, all with 19 or better wins on the season. They had a 2-game lead on Suffolk and a 4-game lead on Belarus Magnus. 3-game lead was broken with a tiebreak, or I should say the three-way tie was broken with a tiebreak, and St. Joe's of Maine comes away as the number 1 seed in the conference tournament. And joining us on the City of Salem Hoopsville hotline is their head coach, Mike Mendevitt. Coach, welcome to Hoopsville.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you taking the time. Congratulations on the first off the three-way tie, and then congratulations on getting the tiebreaker to go in your favor. Which tiebreaker do you know which one it was that got you guys the home court?
Well, actually, there's a series of criteria, I think 6 in total, that you go down in order, and right before the final one, which would have been a coin toss, was overall record. And amongst the three teams, you take the team that had the worst overall record and you put them third. Once you've determined that, you go right back to the top of the tie-breaking criteria, which number 2 was head-to-head, and we were fortunate enough to beat Johnson and Wales at their place in January, and that allowed us to be the number 1 seed.
It's sometimes amazing. Everybody's got different tiebreaker and criteria, and it works out in itself. Obviously, going 10-1 in conference, tremendous. The one loss being to Manual later. You might have gone through this thing undefeated. Of course, you got Johnson and Wales. You beat them earlier in the season as well. It was one heck of a race, at least from an outsider's point of view. What was it like to be in the middle of it?
It was great, exciting. I think our league, certainly over the last couple of years, has really developed into a good balanced league, top to bottom. And with the fact that 3 of us were able to get 10 conference wins, I think speaks to that. That very point. Little did we know how big. We thought it was an exciting win. It was an overtime win at Johnson and Wales, but little did we know how important that would be, come the end of the season and determining our tournament seeding.
Yeah, that's saying it lightly. Of course, look back through the rest of the season. You start off in Saratoga Springs with a game against Wellesley and then SUNY New Paltz. Interesting dichotomy of a weekend. And then you had a loss later in the year against Colby and a loss at Regis. What's interesting is you haven't lost a game at home. All these losses you guys took were all on the road, including the one against Emmanuel as well. Of course, I'm going back to double check. I haven't lost my mind with that. No, you lost one at home against the University of New England. Yep. Yep. See, I knew I was losing my mind somewhere. But nonetheless, still pretty impressive to have that much advantage at home. And now you get to have that be your advantage in the conference tournament. How important is that for you to get these teams to come through Standish, Maine?
Very, very important. 2 years ago, we were fortunate enough to, even though we didn't earn the number 1 seed, we were the 2nd seed, and the number 1 seed got eliminated in the first round. So during that tournament run and NCAA run, we were able to host all 3 playoff games, and it's huge. For many factors. One, not having to really disrupt your daily schedule. You don't have to leave class. You don't have to leave school early. You can eat your normal meals at your normal times. And the fact that you're playing in front of your home crowd, which is always a huge advantage.
It's really a shame that you guys have to be on the coast of Sebago Lake, down there in southern Maine. I feel horrible for you. It's got to be horrible for recruiting too.
Well, I mean, it's the type of place where a lot of our student athletes, when we ask if they've heard of St. Joseph's College or even the area, many of spend maybe a week here and for their vacations. Yeah. And it is pretty nice to have your own private beach right on the shores of Sebago Lake.
I was going to say, if anybody doesn't know, Sebago Lake's one of those beautiful locations in Maine. Not that there aren't a lot of them, and you guys are right on the eastern shore of the lake. Certainly beautiful sunsets, I'm sure. You're also just close enough to Portland that you kind of get to be in the mix in some capacity or another. How does that help with recruiting? Because let's be honest, there's a lot of places in Maine that are or anywhere in New England that are just a little bit too far off the beaten path for a lot of people. It seems like maybe you're in just the right spot.
Yeah, I think we kind of have the best of both worlds, to be honest with you. Our campus is located in a rural setting. It's a safe, environment that I think obviously a lot of families feel very comfortable with. But at the same time, if you want that larger city experience, we're 25 minutes from Portland, Maine, the largest city in Maine, with really just about any cultural or athletic. We have a number of minor league sport teams that are really fun and exciting to follow. And Portland's a real neat city that I'm sure our students, when they look at where they're choosing to go, that certainly would factor in as being a positive on our side. Are you
the most northern team in the GNAC?
We are.
Okay.
Yes.
So obviously that's a disadvantage in the sense that you've got some long trips usually for you, and especially when you're heading to the southern part of that. But that's going to be an advantage this weekend, or at least this week, when people are going to have to come to you. What is your normal length of a trip for at least a conference game?
Well, during the week, we're pretty lucky. We have a number of teams in the greater Boston area, and that's about 2 hours.
Okay.
For us. So we could play a Tuesday or a Wednesday night contest against one of those Boston area teams, and that's not too disruptive. We don't get back too late, and then obviously the trips that are 2 hours plus, we'll schedule those on the weekend, and don't have to worry about missing class.
It's obviously it was an interesting race. Suffolk was hiding in behind you guys, then Albertus, Magnus, and Norwich. But this is all comes down to the fact that probably not going to get in that large bid for yourselves. Now Johnson and Wales is kind of okayly positioned in the Northeast regional rankings. Does that put any extra pressure on you guys, or does that make it easier? You just need to go win the conference tournament.
Well, I think that's pretty much been the mindset for a team like us, all along. Although this year we were pleasantly surprised, and when I say we, I think I speak for the other members of the GNAC. We had two teams in the last two regional rankings. We've had two teams listed in the regional rankings, and I don't ever remember that happening in the past. So, I'm hoping that that's a sign of respect, and certainly, hopefully, a sign of the future that maybe we might be able to get two teams in, depending on, who were to win the conference and who, maybe finish second. I think Johnson and Wales certainly is a great candidate that if they don't win, that have positioned themselves, pretty well for an at-large, and that's great for our conference.
Yeah, that certainly is a great step for the conference, to say the least. Let's talk about your team just a little bit here. This is a team that I would say is a little bit young. You have one senior on this squad?
Yes, that's correct.
And so you're competing at the top of this conference with a lot of youth, which is going to not make the conference happy over the next few years. If you're going to be able to bring all this talent back, that one senior being Morgan Cahill, your center from Yarmouth. Of course, she's your team's leading scorer as well at 15 points a game, 8.5 rebounds a game. But everything's got to go through Kelsey McNamara, clearly. 100 assists a game. She's averaging 4 assists a game plus 14 points a game. And then you have certainly other contributors. Emily Benway, 7 points a game. Emily, is it Curion?
Aquarian.
Aquarian, 6.2 points a game. Anna Marks, 5.2. And Emily, is it Kehoe?
Yes, that's correct.
Oh, good. 5 points a game. But obviously, Cahill is a stalwart in the middle, and clearly McNamara is your all-around. She's going to get the offense clicking in all gears. It's that show there with everybody else, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean we are a relatively young team. We have 3 juniors and 1 senior, Morgan, that you've spoken of, and our 3 juniors, in addition with Morgan, I think have done a really nice job bringing this younger group of freshmen and sophomores along and kind of teaching them, the right way to go about doing things, and how we're, hopefully gonna, work hard and do the little things that hopefully allow you to maybe be a championship team. And I mean, it's great that we only have 1 senior. The only problem is it's Morgan Cahill, who's been a 4-year. Great player for us, and certainly numbers-wise, to only lose 1 player is awesome. But when you lose a player of her ability, her consistency over the last 4 years, it's going to be a huge blow to us. But we're excited. Some of the younger players have really stepped up, Kelsey being one of them, but she's certainly not the only one. That has proven that just because you're a first-year player doesn't mean you can't play. And we've got a good nucleus of those freshmen and sophomores that are proving that for us and helping us, reach the point that we have so far.
What's the evolution of this program? It's not that long ago. This was basically about a 500 program dating back to about 2010 when you were 12-12. The following year, 18-9, then the 20-8, then a fall back to 16-11, then 2013 and 14, you were 23-6, and then 16-10 last year. Now you're 20-5. It seems like you're a 500 program for a while there. Now you've kind of just made this evolution up the ladder, as it were, with a couple blips, which certainly is not that unheard of. And now you've emerged at 20-5 this season. Has this been a long process and a long evolution of the program?
Well, actually, this is my second time at St. Joseph's College. I came back 7 years ago.
Yeah.
With the hope of bringing the program back to the prominence that we enjoyed in the early 90s and early 2000. And to win a conference championship 2 years ago, I really felt that we were, well on track to doing that. I'm really excited about, where we are Given the fact that we graduated some good players two years ago, and we've been able to replace them with some great incoming players. So, I think, when you play in a competitive league, which I think the GNAC is, you're going to have some ups and downs. It's going to be very hard to consistently always be a 20-win team. But I certainly like the direction that we're headed. I'm excited that we could, turn it around from, that 2-year championship season to the point where we're at least knocking on the door. We're not sure we're going to get there, but we certainly are excited about the possibilities.
Certainly impressive. Like I said, especially that 3-way tie, but just what you've done. You obviously had a couple tough games in there. The game against Colby, you lost by a couple, and the game against University of New England there in the middle of or late in January. What do you take from the rest of the season now, moving forward into especially this week? What can you use from the previous 25 games that you've played that you can now, tap into, as it were, as you get ready for conference playoffs?
Well, I think the beauty of a loss is hopefully it shows you those things that you need to work on. And I think that was really true for us this year. I think 4 of our 5 losses were to regionally ranked opponents. So we were losing to good teams that maybe exposed an area or two that we needed to get better at. And after each of those losses, after some time working in practice, I really felt that we were better than we were after, before that loss. And that I think we've learned from each of those, and hopefully we can carry that experience, from those losses to now, where if you lose, you're done. And the hope would be that we've learned enough and can hang in there long enough to maybe get a couple of games in a row and hopefully not experience a loss.
You'll take on Riviera coming up here on Tuesday. Obviously, you swept them earlier this season. Last time you played them was February 2nd. You beat them by 9, 64-55 at your place. I'm trying to find. Is that the only time you played them this year?
Yeah, we actually only play each of the conference members once right now.
Okay. Thank you. I knew there was something I wasn't catching there. So you played them once. You beat them on the 2nd. You'll play them again. What do you know about them? What do you need to prepare for?
Well, again, we were lucky enough to play them at home, which I think was a huge advantage. They're a tough team. They're a scrappy team. They play hard. They got some very talented players at a couple different positions. We're going to have to, bring our A game defensively, but certainly having the advantage of seeing them, a couple weeks ago, we'll look at tape again just to review those things that maybe we did well or maybe that we need to do better. But I think there's definitely an advantage to the fact that we've, only played them a couple weeks ago. So, but they're a good team, to only, to be a 1 versus 8 seed and have that 8-seeded team only lose by 9 points. I think that's a pretty tough first round draw.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. It certainly seems like the GNAC has taken some great steps forward, and obviously St. Joe's as well, to rise into the battle, as it were, in the New England area. And I certainly wish you luck this coming week. Would love to see the monks dancing. I guess that's a little strange to say in the NCAA tournament, but obviously got to get some work done before now and then. As always, though, Coach, we give the final word to you, the coach, the guest. Any final words you want to say to those who may be tuning in?
Well, hey, I appreciate you thinking enough of our program to have us on your show this evening. Obviously, it makes us proud to do what we've done so far. But we know that we've got a lot of work ahead of us. But I know that my team is excited about the opportunity, and we're really proud of them. It's been a long season, but it's been a great season. It's been very rewarding. We've got a lot of kids that have really sacrificed a lot of individual, whether it's playing time or individual accomplishments to help us get to where we are today. And I think if we continue to have that mindset, hopefully we can attain some great things here.
Well, very good, Coach. Good luck. Enjoy your break after the season on Sebago Lake on top of that, and we'll look forward to seeing how the Monks do.
Great. Thanks again, Dave.
Absolutely. Take care. Mike McDevitt joining us here on Hoopsville. Appreciate him taking the time. Again, 20-5, finished on a 3-way tie with Johnson & Wales and Emmanuel, all at 10-1 in conference play. Then got the tie break to fall in their favor and as a result, the tournament technically will go through St. Joseph's. Obviously, it's not like Birmingham-Southern in our last interview where all the games will take place at Birmingham-Southern. This is more of the traditional Division III where there'll be quarterfinals on Tuesday, semifinals on Thursday, championship on Saturday. The advantage is the Monks will play at home the entire way should they keep on winning. And keep winning all the way, hopefully, to an automatic bid. But it is interesting. We'll see how regional rankings come out. But we were talking about the difference between Johnson and Wales on the men's side and women's side. The women's side clearly aren't driving the SOS as much. They don't believe in the .03 to 2 game ratio as much. They follow it, but don't follow it as much as the men. So Johnson and Wales women, I think, were 5th in the regional rankings last week. The men were 8th or 9th. With a better, about similar resume in terms of numbers. So just, the difference there may allow the GNAC to possibly get in that large bid, which would say a lot for that conference and where it's come from over the years. Thank you again to Coach McDevitt for joining us, and good luck to them. Going to take another break. When we come back, we're going to talk Mid-Atlantic and the craziness that is the conference tournaments, especially on the men's side, but also the women's side. Ryan Scott will join us, and we'll talk all about that. You're listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA NABC studios. We'll take a break, and when we come back, Ryan Scott, and I'll answer your questions if you got any. So don't shy away. You're listening to Hoopsville. By the way, you should point out, Coach McDevitt on the City of Salem hotline. City of Salem, of course, hosting the men's Division III championship weekend for the 20th consecutive year. We'll hand out their 19th men's championship. Make sure you head on down to the Roanoke Valley for the championships and get your tickets today.
Something I discovered in myself is that if I have a goal, then I can accomplish it.
It's a well-rounded experience.
At a Division III school, you primarily a student athlete, so the school is really shaped around you developing yourself as a complete individual.
It helps a lot that you have a family with your team that can guide you.
I'm a Division III student athlete, and I know how powerful words can be. The term gay doesn't mean stupid, lame, or less than.
So I pledge to speak up if I hear the term gay used in a derogatory way or any other homophobic terms.
If you can play in Division III.
I'm a Division III student athlete, and my teammates unconditionally accepted me as part of their family. So now I pledge to do the same for others. If you can play in Division III.
I'm a current Division III student athlete, and I remember how intimidating the first year of college can be.
So if you're a first-year student athlete and nervous about coming out as LGBTQ, I pledge to stand by your side as your ally.
If you can play Division III.
I'm a Division III student athlete, and I believe student athletes can help break down the barriers of exclusion.
I pledge to support and encourage my teammates
to support my campus's LGBTQ student group
by volunteering and participating in events.
If you can play in Division III.
I'm a Division III student athlete, and I believe that everyone should be educated on LGBTQ issues.
I pledge to work with my athletic department and my campus to foster dialogue and create a community of support, respect, and pride.
If you can play in Division III.
We are Division III student athletes, and you can be too. If you can play in Division III.
Something I discovered in myself is that if I have a goal, then I can accomplish it.
It's a well-rounded experience.
At a Division III school, you primarily a student athlete, so the school is really shaped around you developing yourself as a complete individual.
It helps a lot that you have a family with your team that can guide you.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at D3Hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
Welcome back to Hoopsville. This is Danielle Donahue, Executive Director of the WBCA, and we are a proud partner and very excited about all the future broadcasts. Here's Dave.
And welcome back to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA NABC studios. If you've got questions for us, tweet us at D3Hoops or hashtag Hoopsville. Email us, Hoopsville at D3Hoops.com. Join us on Facebook, Facebook.com/Hoopsville. I'm just realizing this is the second show in a row that I forgot to hit the darn record button on my broadcasting computer, which means the podcast is in jeopardy yet again. But we'll try and figure that out and hopefully get the podcast up in the next 24 hours for anybody who missed out on it. At this point, if you've got questions, please send them our way at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. Email us, Hoopsville at D3Hoops.com, etc. We'd love to hear from you and answer your questions. Of course, I mentioned earlier a question I got from Franklin and Marshall. I'm going to get a little bit of a different take on that here momentarily. We also got a great question from an old friend of ours. Bill Finney. Bill, I will get to your question momentarily. I promise you. Love hearing from Bill Finney, former Marymount head coach. We'll talk to him. We'll get his email here shortly. Speaking of which, though, because joining us on the I got to get rid of the alert there so I don't have that shown up. There we go. Joining us on the Skype is our good friend Ryan Scott from the Mid-Atlantic. He's a regional writer for D3Hoops.com. Joining us to now talk about the Mid-Atlantic, kind of like what we did with Rusty and others, and Howard Herman, for example, when we talked about the NESCAC just the other day, bringing in Ryan here to talk about the Mid-Atlantic. Ryan, thanks for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me on, Dave.
Before we get into the exact conference tournaments, which came down right to the end here on Saturday for most of these conferences as to who was in and who was out and who was positioned where, let me quickly reference, I'm not going to go all the way into this email here from this gentleman about my blog, which I, of course, post my top 25 each week and blog about it. He says that he wanted to give me some perspective on Franklin and Marshall. Let me just point out to this gentleman, I know Franklin and Marshall pretty darn well, and I've seen them in action more times than I can count. Basically thinks, though he admits he's an unabashed fan, and especially of F&M, that maybe I was a little too harsh on him. Ryan, you and I actually got a chance to sit next to each other and see Franklin and Marshall at Johns Hopkins, where they lost that game about a week ago. And you and I, maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, I came out of there going, yeah, I just don't think this is a top 25 team. They're good, but they're not one of the top 25 in the country. But what's your take on them?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they have yet to play up to the potential they've got. I think the team they put on the floor is a top 25 caliber team, but their stretches, especially like in that Hopkins game, I've seen them on film 3 or 4 times and in person twice this year, and they've got all the talent. They just haven't put the games together when they need it to quite get the vote that get my vote anyway.
Interesting enough, too, we had a few F&M fans near us who also had the same opinion. By the way, F&M they felt had a few holes in their offense, and they weren't even thrilled about it, which was, I thought, very surprising.
Yeah, I will say, though, I watched maybe the last 6 minutes of regulation, the overtime against Dickinson the other night, and they were looking a lot better. I mean, that's a big game at home.
Yeah.
I think it was senior night. And that, they're capable of playing that way at any moment. And, I wouldn't be surprised to see them, even make the Sweet 16 or farther this year if they put it together. I mean, the team is talented. They just haven't shown it the way some other teams have.
That's true. A little inconsistency as well. But we'll see how it plays out. And that's kind of my transition here. Let's talk about the conference tournament for at least Centennial. It will go through the Franklin and Marshall Diplomats home court. Granted, they will play a 4-5 game first. Hold on, I'm calling up the Centennial myself because I don't even have it in front of me. I apologize.
Gettysburg and Hopkins.
Thank you. Gettysburg and Hopkins will take on that game, the 4-5, and then Franklin and Marshall will host the top 4 starting on Friday. Give us your take on the landscape, as it were.
Well, I think this is going to be the most competitive tournament in the region. The teams are all playing well at the right time. I mean, Dickinson and Hopkins are 2 teams we thought at the beginning of the year would be good, and they both struggled, but they're both playing really well down the stretch. They've both got some good senior leadership on the team. Gettysburg and Swarthmore were a little better earlier in the season, but they're still winning games and getting big wins. And, of course, Franklin and Marshall at the top. I think any one of these teams could win the whole tournament. I would not be surprised at all.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think, and back to our point about top 25 or not in Franklin Marshall, I think they're a little more vulnerable than people realize, mainly because the teams in the Centennial have developed, Ryan. listen, the beginning of the season, the Centennial didn't seem this strong. Hopkins was floundering. Dickinson was in disarray. Gettysburg, we couldn't figure out. Franklin Marshall was certainly playing well. There's no way they couldn't. McDaniel, as always, was all over the place. It was really hard. I think the last few weeks, this conference has grown, as it were, and gotten stronger.
Yeah, I mean, there have been a number of injuries, people leaving for different reasons, but I think the teams have really come together at the right moment. I know Swarthmore's missing Bourne, right, who's out, but for the most part, they've become the teams they wanted to be at the beginning of the season. And talking to the coaches early, we saw Alan Soretti from Dickinson at the Hoopsville Classic, and he was saying the same thing. He said it's going to take us a while to get there, but they really seem to have gotten there by the end of the season.
Yeah, and I've avoided him. I saw him 3 or 4 games beginning of the season. They all lost. He didn't want to see me anymore, so I've avoided him, and I now see him winning. So he can send me a gift later if you would like. I will take credit for it. So who's your pick to win the conference?
This tournament?
Yeah.
I really like the way Dickinson's playing. I mean, they beat F&M at F&M just the other night. They got into that 3rd seed, so they don't have to play that opening game. Swarthmore is not as good as they were earlier in the season, so I think they've got the easiest path to that final, and they just proved they could beat F&M. That's the pick I've got right now.
Who's your dark? Yeah, but who's your dark horse?
I think Hopkins. I mean, you and I saw them. Yeah. They beat F&M just 2 weeks ago, and they've got tons of seniors on that team. Their point guard plays a little tough, but they've got the size inside and the guys who really want to win that game. That's the dark horse for me. Obviously, F&M, they're not going to be a surprise if they win. They're the number 1 seed, but I'm going with Dickinson, and I think Hopkins would be maybe the surprise out of the 5.
I think I remember turning to you in the thing going, wow, I didn't think Hopkins was this tall. This big. Yeah. They surprised me.
I think you said that about 10 times.
Yeah, I probably did. I mean, I really was just like, wait, geez, they are big. Let's switch over let's go Landmark Conference. This interesting finish to the weekend. Susquehanna was leading most of this the conference most of the season. Interestingly enough, it ends up being Catholic, who everybody picked would win this conference, who ends up pulling it out in the end, thanks in part to a big win against Scranton on Saturday. They played back-to-back games and locked it up officially today against Merchant Marine. Let's see. It'll be Catholic number 1, who was tied with Susquehanna. Susquehanna will be number 2. Scranton 3rd. Juniata 4. Those are your top 4 to play. There is no other 4-5 game. What's your take on the Landmark?
I think Catholic is hitting on all cylinders at the right time. You and I talked at the beginning of the season when they got such a high preseason rank, and you asked if I think they were that good, and I said, last year they were probably like 22nd, maybe best team in the country, and that's sort of what I expected this year. And as I'm putting my top 25 ballot together today, it seems like that's about where I'm going to end up putting them. They are what we thought they were. They might not be the 6th team in the country like they were preseason, but I think this is the team we sort of expected. Just took a while for us to notice, I think.
Still having a little trouble with defense. They're still giving up a ton of points, I think, which will make them a little exposed to the NCAA tournament, but it is nice to see them kind of recover. You're right, won 8 in a row now, 9 of their last 10. They're certainly playing well. Scranton, in the meantime, is that enigma that I can't get my finger on, to say the least. Do you have a dark horse in this group?
I mean, I guess Juniata is the dark horse. I don't think they've been playing well enough to actually have a chance to win this. At this point, maybe you'll say Susquehanna is the dark horse. I haven't seen them play at all since December.
I saw them this week.
Haven't worked that out, and so they don't seem to be playing as well, but I haven't seen them to know what they're doing right now.
I saw them this week at Goucher. Granted, Goucher, a program that actually won 10 games with a win on Saturday for the first time in 12 or 13 years, believe it or not. But I was impressed with Susquehanna. I was actually expecting them not to. I thought they'd struggle. Man, Danny Weiss inside is scary. He and Boken on the same floor together is got to be a feast for people to watch, because those two are incredible. And they shot extremely well from outside. As good as Catholic is, I don't think they can stop Susquehanna's defense again, or defensively again. I'm going to take Susquehanna in this grouping.
Yeah, and that's probably the smarter pick just in terms of the numbers. Catholic's coming in better, but as you said, Susquehanna, I think, has the stronger team. Like I said, I haven't seen them play recently to know for sure, but I agree.
Let's jump over to the Capital Athletic Conference. Christopher Newport, surprise, surprise, won this one. 18-0, undefeated mark. Really, I mean, I'm going to ask you later for a dark horse, but it almost seems irrelevant. Salisbury finishes second, though surprisingly with more losses in conference than I expected. Then Mary Washington. And then you have a drop-off from there. They go from 10-8 Mary Washington to 8-10 St. Mary's, Wesley, and Southern Virginia. Southern Virginia, who actually had been near the top for a while, just did not finish well, losing 4 or 6 of their last 10. This one's a definite top-heavy conference, and maybe Salisbury's the only team that has a chance here to knock off Christopher Newport.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, Salisbury, there are a lot of seniors, a lot of juniors. They've got the confidence to be able to win that game even on the road. I don't know that they can do it. Christopher Newport has just been so impressive. Scoring, playing defense, they're deep, they're getting a lot of contributions from the bench. As good as that Salisbury team is, I don't see them winning.
Yeah, and then the at-large bid for Salisbury is probably a pipe dream at this point with a 6th loss. Not a tremendously awesome SOS. CAC may only get one bid, and it's going to be to Christopher Newport unless there's an upset.
Yeah, I think Salisbury might. I mean, it'll all depend on the upsets, I guess, around the country and everything. I think I've got a little higher hopes for Salisbury than you do, maybe. But yeah, I mean, I think they can win this, and that's probably what they're going to have to hope for, because they're definitely on the bubble if they don't.
My hopes are always leery this time of year until I see the 3rd regional rankings. Once the 3rd regional rankings come out, then I start to buckle down a little bit and understand. Because so much can change. And that's when I start to feel more comfortable about things. But you do have a good point about Salisbury there. By the way, nice to see Mary Washington at 14-11, 10-8 overall. They're going to be on top of this conference in no time flat. You just know it. Of course, it's going to go through Christopher Newport nonetheless. Commonwealth Conference, MAC Commonwealth. This one was a hodgepodge of a conference this year. Alvernia, who usually is streaking this time of year down near the middle of the pack, is streaking at the top of the pack, though they just lost on Saturday. They're number 1, though, so things are going to have to go through their gym. Lebanon Valley is 2nd, Arcadia 3rd with Stevenson, and Lycoming in Widener are 5th. I believe, correct me if I'm not wrong, Stevenson is hosting Lycoming?
I think so.
And it's interesting because Lycoming had been leading this league for about the first half or first 2/3 and have just kind of come apart here at the end. That kind of feeds into this hodgepodge scenario.
Yeah, they didn't play the greatest out-of-conference schedule, Lycoming, and so I know that's what we were all worried about when we were voting early on, that they had that good record, but we weren't exactly sure how strong it was.
Yeah.
And they played real well in the conference. It's just the last, I don't know, what did they lose? 5 out of the last 6 games.
Yeah.
Really just couldn't hold up through the end of the season.
By the way, we've been corrected on Centennial. It says Hopkins not in the Centennial playoffs. Gettysburg to play McDaniel and no play in. Oh, did we miss that? Hold on a second. I thought you were right. We're going to check the Centennial page.
Yeah, I thought Hopkins had the tiebreaker with McDaniel.
Yep, no, but we'll check the championship here momentarily, folks. This is live TV, blog, podcast, or whatever. It's live. So bear with us here.
I've gotten more tiebreakers wrong this weekend than I have in a long time. So
I'm telling you that, and the crazy thing is the tiebreakers are so all over the place for some. Like the MAC Commonwealth I thought was one way, then it turns out it was another. And it is McDaniel versus Gettysburg.
It is. I totally missed. So I guess my dark horse is really dark.
Yeah, there you go. So Hopkins not even in it. We apologize for the confusion on the Centennial Conference. McDaniel and Gettysburg will be playing. It's really funny. I didn't get a tweet from my good old friend about that, unless he tweeted me on the other account. In that case, I didn't see it. Let me just go over it. No, he must not be paying attention, my friend, to the Centennial Conference, nonetheless. Thank you for the correction on email. We appreciate that. I don't know who this gentleman's name is, and I'm not going to announce his email address. That's not fair to him. But thank you nonetheless. He also... Yeah, okay, he emailed us twice to tell us that. We got that. Thank you. There's a delay, folks. If you ever are watching this show, there is a delay. Not to mention the fact I'm by myself in this studio, checking email, Twitter, producing the show, talking with Ryan, checking out schedules. I do have 3 monitors, but one of them is now dedicated to Ryan. So bear with us. We'll get to your emails when we can. Thank you for the correction. So your dark horse is gone, sir.
Yep.
Anyway, well, let's go back to the CAC again quickly. Or no, where was I? I was at the Commonwealth. Listen, Alvernia is usually the team here that is streaking to the end and has won, 2 or 3 in a row that way. They're in a strange position of being the top dog in this situation. Are they your favorite, or is there somebody else you like?
Oh, I like Stevenson right now. I
Really?
like the way they beat Alvernia in this last game of the season. You've been waiting for them. At the beginning of the year, we saw them obviously at the Hoopsville Classic. They had like 7 guys who weren't hurt. And
yeah.
But they were picked number 1. This is a good team. That game against Alvernia, I think Christian Roberts had 30 points and Eric Fisher went for 20 and 15. That's the team they thought they were bringing into this season, and showing up at the end. That's the team I think to beat in this tournament. They've got a great coach. They've got senior leaders who are playing together right now. I think that's the strong one.
It would certainly be a role reversal. They've usually been the top dog and then gotten knocked off. This would put them in the kind of the no pressure situation. You're right. And Roberts has been injured. Fisher's been injured. You're right. A lot of guys been dinged up on that team. So I guess they would also quantify as your dark horse then.
Yeah, because they're 4th or 5th seed. Yeah. Right, they're playing in that first game.
Yeah, they're the 4th seed. Absolutely.
They may be out tomorrow night. Who knows?
You never know. Hey, if you don't mind, I want to switch over to the women's side as well. Let me start with the CAC. One, I know that you've had your pulse on just a little bit because we've been watching Christopher Newport on that. Tried to go through their they had a 17-game winning streak coming in against Marymount when they basically a regular season conference tournament, a mini tournament game, because the winner was going to control this tournament. Marymount comes out with the win, an impressive win to knock off Christopher Newport and send them back to a 2-way tie for second. I know you were paying attention probably a little bit more to that game than I was. What did you see?
I think it's what we've seen all along. Christopher Newport is really young, and they hit a really high-pressure game, and they handled it well. I mean, there was runs back and forth for both teams, and they stayed in it when I didn't think they necessarily would. But Marymount's got those senior leaders, and Kiavana Lacey showed up in that game. I got to watch the whole thing on the web stream.
Great.
I got to watch with my daughter. She's 3.5. She doesn't get to see women play basketball too much. She was really excited about watching the game. It was really cool. But they it seemed a lot like experience there. They knew what that game was, and the seniors who don't have a lot of chances to put big wins up like that, they won the game down the stretch.
Certainly an impressive win for Marymount. Now everything will go through Arlington. Of course, Christopher Newport 2, Mary Washington 3, then York 4, Salisbury's 5, and then you got everybody else. Really, it's a top race for 4 teams here, and all 4 of them have legitimate chances to get into the NCAA tournament as at-large teams. Even York, though York's certainly the one more on the bubble than anybody else. Do you have a dark horse here?
I don't know how likely it is just because of how strong the tournament is, but I think Salisbury is capable of at least getting a win or 2 in this tournament. I know that they're a dark horse, and they were a Sweet 16 team last year, but they're a team that, as I've talked to the coaches in the conference, are still scared of, and I think would make some waves.
It'll certainly be fun to watch. Of course, nobody wanted to really technically go through Newport News just because of distance. So I think there's some people cheering the fact that Marymount got the win and kept the tournament a little bit more centralized.
Yeah, and it is just a top-heavy thing. It's the way it happened is Marymount won 2 against Christopher Newport. Christopher Newport won 2 against Mary Washington, and Mary Washington won both of them against Marymount.
Yeah.
If Marymount had lost that game, they wouldn't have been second. They would have been third. They would have been playing the extra game in the tournament. So it's really close at the top, and all those teams are really strong.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It was a very interesting result, how tight everything was. Let's switch over to the Landmark Conference. Scranton walked away with this one. Very impressive team. I got to see them about a month or so ago. 25-0 on the season, 16-0 in the conference. 4-game lead on Moravian. We're used to this being a little bit of a more challenging at the top and a few more teams in play. Scranton thumped Catholic yesterday. And Catholic ended up finishing 3rd at 11-5. Susquehanna's 4th at 10-6. That is your 4 teams for the playoffs. I think it'd be hard-pressed to say anybody wins this but Scranton, but if there is one, who would it be?
I think Moravian's the only team that probably can hang with them, but it doesn't look like they can really hang with them. I know the last meeting was just a 5-point game. This one won't be at Moravian, so that'll be harder. Scranton just seems like they're getting better each week. they're winning by a lot.
Yeah.
And they're playing really well. This is a team that, even as good as they are, the players didn't have the same kind of leadership experience in the past because they've just been so strong, and they graduated a number of players last year. So it really is, like a team coming together. Even though they haven't lost a game all season, they've had to learn to play together, and it seems like they're really hitting a stride right now.
Yeah, the only knock I have on Scranton is I don't think they're as big as people think they are inside. I'd love to see them play a DeSales team, who I think is very similar to them. But on the flip side, once we get in the tournament and Scranton faces off against some bigger squads, the likes of NYU or Amherst or Thomas More, and obviously some of those matchups are not actually possible. But
even some of those CAC teams are pretty big.
That's true. I'm curious how Scranton's going to handle that, because the Landmark has not been a big conference in the last couple of years, and Scranton usually has some size, and this year they don't. Please don't take me wrong, people. They are a good team. I'm just curious about the matchups is really where that comes down. Let's go Centennial here. Muhlenberg, McDaniel, Gettysburg are the top three. Muhlenberg 16-2. McDaniel had a chance to keep this one interesting at the top of the conference. Here's their problem. They lose to Gettysburg and kind of set up a scenario here for a team who needs an automatic bid of almost not even be able to get back to the championship game the way this is going to get seeded out.
Yeah, that SOS does not help them any.
No.
So they need to win this tournament.
Yeah, they need to win the tournament, but they've set themselves up a little bit. They've made this as challenging as they possibly could.
Yep.
Let's see. By the way, Dickinson will take on Haverford in the 4-5 game. Then everybody will head to Muhlenberg to play. Gettysburg will play off against McDaniel, and obviously they just beat them. Both teams basically went on runs in that game. Then Muhlenberg will take on Dickinson or Haverford, with the winners going on to obviously to play in the championship game.
Well, this one actually is maybe I've gotten the tiebreaker wrong, but I think Ursinus, they've still got a makeup game tomorrow. And
you're right, they do.
Or is that?
No, hold on.
Tomorrow. Yeah, that's tomorrow. And,
yes, you're right.
If they win, I believe they get the 5th seed.
No, you're right, because I forgot on the men's side, it ended up that game isn't as relevant as everyone thought it was going to be.
It doesn't matter for the men, but the women, it's going to matter. For Sinus wins, they can get in.
That's right. The women, that flips everything. So that changes. And I think they moved the game to Wednesday, the first round game, where they were going to move it on the men's side. And they had all kinds of scenarios going on in the Centennial Conference because of Ursinus basically playing 4 games in the last week. Due to illness, due to weather, you name a reason, they had to delay games. I forgot that Ursinus still had one to play, so we still have some things left up in the air. But if you were to pick a dark horse, let's include Ursinus in here. Let's call it a 6-horse race here just in case. If you were to pick a dark horse, who is it?
I have very little reason for this, but I just have a feeling that Gettysburg is gonna do something. Okay. I still think Muhlenberg is the team to beat, and that's the team I would pick. But if we're going to see a surprise, I think it might be Gettysburg.
Very nice. Okay. I like it.
It's a feeling. It's purely, I just got a feeling about the way they're playing, the way they're looking, that if there's going to be a surprise, that's the one I'm betting on.
Then we'll switch over to the Commonwealth Conference. Albright walked away with this one, despite a strange loss to give them 15-1, but they're 23-2 overall, 15-1 in conference. Messiah, interesting enough, coach said at the beginning of the year, we're not good right now. Wait till about January, we're going to get good. Here came Messiah. They're 7-3 in their last 10. Have won 4 in a row. They certainly have. They ended up second in the conference. Stevenson, who at one point had a chance to catch Albright and stumbled, at least has picked themselves back up and finished third. Lebanon Valley's fourth. Lycoming is fifth. That is your grouping. Lycoming and Lebanon Valley will play the 4-5 game here. I think that's tomorrow or Tuesday. I can't remember how the MAC does that. The winner of that game will take on Albright. Stevenson and Messiah will play in the semifinals as well. I think this is Albright's to take, but there's a couple teams in here like Messiah and Stevenson that could certainly throw some wrinkles in this.
Yeah, I talked to Albright earlier. I did a column on them a couple of weeks back, and they are really determined to win this game because they lost in the championship game last year, kept them out of the tournament, and they're pretty sore about that. They're determined to get back. The only question I have is they're pretty much going to get in this tournament, the NCAAs, whether they win this or not. And I don't know whether that comes into play in their minds or not, because like you said, Messiah and Stevenson are good enough teams to win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's gonna be fascinating, this race. Albright's just got to keep focused. That's the key. If they can keep focused, I think they can get it done. But if they sway, there's teams ready to pounce, to be sure. I think that wraps it up for the both sides of the Mid-Atlantic. What else are you noticing? What else you got on your mind for writing this week, sir?
Well, I'm talked to Marymount, to Ashley Rogers today. The CAC is super strong, and the fact that they came through and won it. I went back and looked at the top 25 votes this year for the women, and there were 4 other teams in their conference who've gotten more votes than them this year, and then they end up coming through and winning the conference. So it's an interesting story, and Kiavana Lacey, talked to her as well. So that'll be the big feature this week. Couple of things mentioning Stevenson and the way that they're playing will be in there. And I've had a number of readers write in to talk about stories that maybe should get a mention and might get a sentence or two, but especially I had a number of people comment about how the Dickinson women did this year. They'd only won 12 games over the last 2 years combined, and they got 15 wins this year, and they're in the conference playoffs, so kudos to them.
That is true. Good point. I totally forgot about that one. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. The email Bill has, I'll just tackle on my own. I won't worry about it. You have better things to do than that.
It's fun. I told the guys on the boards to send in crazy questions for you to ask. So.
Oh, did you? Oh, you're so kind. Bill focused mainly on the regional rankings and the women. Do you really want to tackle these with me?
Sure.
All right. So he says, do you think 4 CAC teams will be ranked in the women's Mid-Atlantic region this week? He goes on to say, with McDaniel losing this past week, can York move back into the 8th spot? Absolutely, I think that's possible. I think McDaniel is an easy pick to remove from the rankings with a loss this week. And I don't see any reason why York couldn't move back into the regional rankings, into the number 8 spot. I don't think that puts them safe. I think anything below 6 is danger of not making the tournament out of the Mid-Atlantic. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like McDaniel really hurt themselves with that loss. We don't get the SOS numbers for the women, right?
Yeah, we do. They're they're at the very bottom of that page.
At the bottom, all right. I haven't looked at those.
Go all the way down to the bottom. You'll see them listed at the bottom.
Towards the bottom, but I do think York is a good team. But I don't know how well their numbers stack up. McDaniel's just hurting them. That SOS has not been good for them, and they can't afford to keep these extra losses.
Sorry, I got a message I was just responding to from our good friend Ira Thor. York's SOS. I can't even find York. Why don't I find York? There they are. York's SOS is a 525. It's not bad. The problem is they're 1-5 against regionally ranked opponents. Kind of need to have a few extra results there. But I mean, when you turn around and compare them to McDaniel, McDaniel is 1-2 versus regionally ranked opponents with a 497. Most likely that SOS, by the way, has also come down. And believe it or not, I can look that one up. What happened to yours?
You also then have a team like Messiah, who's not in there. They've got a much better SOS. They've only got one less win.
It's true. Messiah could enter
their
the
regional
equation.
ranking. They're 3-2 against the regional ranked opponents, and so it's hard to know who is going to jump back into those standings. I don't know if York being. I mean, I guess they don't look at whether they're the 4th team in a conference, but.
No, it's not
that just
technically
makes your
criteria.
regionally ranked opponent record a lot worse.
As we continue on with his questions, I don't think the top 3 will change in ranking, but how will the committee rank the next 3? Christopher Newport, Mary Washington, and Marymount. Well, because Marymount beat Christopher Newport twice, that gives them an advantage. Let's just remind people, it was Scranton, Albright, Muhlenberg, then Christopher Newport, Mary Washington, Marymount. I think Marymount will move ahead of Christopher Newport, and Christopher Newport will stay ahead of Mary Washington. So basically imagine Marymount leapfrogs the two of them and parks themselves 4th, Christopher Newport 5th, Mary Washington 6th, only because, again, you've got a double win from Marymount over Christopher Newport.
Yeah, and it's going to bring their regionally the record against regionally ranked opponents is going to be closer because Christopher Newport was 4-1. Now it's going to be 4-2. It'll hop. Marymount will go up to 4-2 as well, plus the head-to-head. Mary Washington's sitting at 4-4. I think that'll move because Christopher Newport already had a worse SOS. So the fact that they were ahead with a lesser SOS is going to make it easier for the committee to drop them down.
Yeah, I'm bouncing around between things. I could see it happening. I mean, it's a fluid situation. Again, I think Scranton is safe. I think Albright's safe. I think Muhlenberg's safe. I think Christopher Newport's safe. I actually think Marymount has made themselves safe. Mary Washington's going to be in a little bit of trouble. Moravian's in trouble. McDaniel's in trouble. Everybody else. So obviously, it also depends on how many darn people lose.
And it depends on what they do with that overall record. I mean, Christopher Newport does have 22 wins.
22 wins now and 3 losses, yeah. And then the women certainly seem... The men don't ignore the win-loss, but the women seem to lean towards it a little bit more than the men do. Yeah. So he says, do you think the committee will rank the CAC teams in order of their tournament seeding? Well, technically, Bill, no, because they don't care about the tournament seeding. It may end up that way, but I think because the criteria, interesting enough, kind of mirrors the tiebreaker. Not that there was a tiebreaker, but just how the teams ended up positioning themselves. You know, again, Christopher Newport beat Mary Washington twice, and Marymount beat Christopher Newport, and Mary Washington beat Marymount. The problem is I think Mary Washington has hurt themselves enough that Marymount will get ahead of them somehow. But that's where it gets tricky in this whole thing. It says Marymount has the best strength of schedule, 92nd in the country. Yeah, I mean, that's where that all gets complicated.
Well, and that's why I said it's even harder for this conference and those 3 teams in particular because they all beat each other twice.
Yeah.
And nobody split with each other, so the head-to-head doesn't even work.
Yeah, right. No, the head-to-head actually makes it worse.
Yeah.
The head-to-head makes them go, screw it, we got to go somewhere else. And by the way, we should point out to people, and I haven't brought this up yet this season, and I apologize, 9 times out of 10, they are not looking at Team A and Team B and trying to figure out how they rank them. They're usually looking at Team A, Team B, Team C, and Team D. You know, there's 4 teams in the mix while they're ranking. They're not going head-to-head straight up one versus another team. And that's why in a scenario like this, those head-to-heads make it more complicated because you literally are just making the stew thicker, as it were. And so that's why, you know, it's a little bit different and maybe a little bit crazy in that Mid-Atlantic. I think they got a lot of choices in the Mid-Atlantic. And yeah, I think there's a chance. By the way, another thing that should be pointed out is whoever's ranked in this last regional rankings that we see, the third ones, will impact the final regional rankings we don't see. However, there's a twist. So, you know, you got the results versus regionally ranked opponents. If York enters the equation, all of a sudden Christopher Newport, Mary Washington, and Marymount have extra games added to their mix of teams that they play who are regionally ranked. That will help for the last regional rankings. But once those last regional rankings are done, the results versus regionally ranked opponents is recalculated, and then the national committee will make adjustments per that again before those rankings are finalized. I know that's a little confusing, but I just want to point out this is a very important week to position for those final regional rankings, but it's not the end of it, if that makes any sense. By the way, that's pretty much the end of Bill's questions. He had something else along the lines of... oh, I can't find it anymore. Where is your email, Bill? I lost it. I must have closed it already. Anyway, basically those were the lines. Bill is a lover of the CAC, obviously, and we appreciate his thought. And I think he served on the committee a while back. But memory does not remember. Anyway, so, sir, thank you for joining me on that. Any other final thoughts before we let you go?
No, just that I'm really looking forward to this week in the Mid-Atlantic region. We've got so many tournaments that are up in the air, and especially on the men's side, you just really don't know what's going to happen. And I'm looking forward to watching some great games.
Yeah, you're going to try and go anywhere in particular?
I don't know that I'm going to be able to get anywhere. I may try to get up to F&M on Saturday for the men's championship, but I'm not sure if I'm going to make it in person in any of those.
Don't blame me. Too bad Wesley couldn't have been in the mix for you.
They made it in. The men snuck in as the 6th seed, but they obviously don't get to host.
But they're not hosting, right?
Well, it was actually really close. I think if they had won, there was a close game against Salisbury that I went to, and if they had won that game, they would have been hosting a game. So they went from 8th to 6th pretty quick. They could have gone from 8th to 4th.
Wow, that would have been
pretty
pretty
last
cool.
Day.
Craziness out of that CAC, to say the least. Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
Ryan Scott joining us on the City of Salem Skype hotline. Appreciate him taking the time to do that. Of course, City of Salem hosted the Division III Men's Championship weekend for the 20th consecutive year, and 19th title will be handed out in Salem on the men's side. Make sure you get your tickets for the Roanoke Valley online today, and don't forget, of course, on the women's side, they'll be going through Capital, we should point out, in the semifinals and the championship in Indianapolis. Let's see. I thought I saw a couple more questions. I want to get to those if I spot them here. If you do have a question here in the closing minutes of the show, at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville, email us hoopsville@d3hoops.com. Join us on Facebook, facebook.com/Hoopsville. Scranton beat DeSales in the second game of the season. Ron, I understand that. I'm talking about now. I want to see Scranton play DeSales. I think it's a different matchup. I think DeSales is playing a little bit better in women's basketball now than they were at the beginning of the season. So that's why I want to see that matchup again. Again, second game of the season means a lot in the grand scheme of things because all the criteria doesn't make that game any less a game than it did yesterday's game. But I want to see that game again. I think it'd be a different matchup, and I'd love to see it take place again. I guess I don't have any other emails, so we're probably going to wrap this baby up. Mainly because I'm a little worn out today, and we got a big week ahead of us. Obviously, again, Thursday we'll be on the air 7 o'clock as we break down conference tournaments as we go through, and then on next Sunday we'll be on the air at 6 o'clock as we not only talk to teams who maybe burst some bubbles, but also talk to teams who are on those bubbles. Not to mention the fact we will break down who we think is in and out of the NCAA tournament. That's all here. We'll be going for 4, maybe 5 hours. That's how we do things. And then brackets will be announced on the 29th. That's all coming ahead. By the way, cannot forget to mention the Hoopsville fundraiser. We're 52% of the way there, folks. We could use your help. Please join us on the Hoopsville fundraiser. We will tweet out a link here momentarily, and we're going to get aggressive this week. Get that over the threshold. We were trying to help shine the light on Division III basketball, help us do that. By the way, some of you may have noticed I'm wearing a Carthage women's basketball polo. Our good friends at Carthage sent us this. We appreciate them. I always love wearing the school's shirts if I can. Of course, they didn't have as great a season. Coach Bernero didn't have as great a season as he had hoped, but our tip of the hat to Carthage, nonetheless. Got to thank our guests for coming on the show. Coach Brunner-Jones from Concordia-Wisconsin, Coach Ricks from Birmingham-Southern, Coach Tomlin from Old Westbury, and Coach McDermott from St. Joe's. I also want to thank Ryan Scott for joining me on the show earlier. I want to thank all the sports information directors for their help as well. More guests on Thursday as well. More of your questions. Don't forget regional rankings come out on Wednesday. And a new top 25, though probably no changes in the top, but I suspect the bottom half's going to be a topsy-turvy on both the men's and women's side. You'll get that all tomorrow. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for enjoying the show. If you're listening to this on the audio podcast, we figured out the problem, and thank you for being patient with us. You've been listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA NABC studio. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back here on Thursday night, 7 o'clock Eastern. Good night, everybody.